You guys know how much we love to have big picture conversations about the comic book industry. And this year, with everything that's going on right now, those kinds of conversations feel more important than ever. And to have our first state of the comics industry conversation of 2025, we had to seek out an expert on the matter, a person who has been entrenched, embedded in comic book journalism for many, many years now. We are speaking with the editor in chief of Popverse, former editor and writer of CBR, Newsarama, Marvel Entertainment, just all over the map. We have Chris Arrant here with us. Chris, thank you so much for joining. How you doing?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's really nice to be here. You are very right. Like when you said there's a lot going on, I'm thinking like which of the many things is he talking about? And it seems like it's everything is going wrong. Well, maybe not going wrong, but some things are surprising to say the least.
And I love that that's the energy that you bring out immediately, because that tells me that we can have this conversation go all over the place, because I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of great stuff happening, but there's obviously some pretty scary things afoot in the short term and medium long term. So we're going to get into all of that.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm glad we're just not talking for 2 hours about this Gwen Stacy grave teaser. Cool. Good.
Hey, this
We got
sounds like
more
me when I
stuff.
go to the comic store. I go for 10 minutes and it's like 2 hours. And I'm just talking to the shop guy and just whoever walks in. And so, yeah, let's go.
I love that. I love that. See, like I feel like, we're gonna obviously have to talk about, the LCS and stuff like that. And one of the things that people always undersell about the local comic book shop is that idea that it's one of the final like third places in the world, where it's like, where else do you go if you're an adult person with, spare time on your hands to have community? And for us, the comic book shop is one of those places, maybe the only place some of us have.
Yeah, like for me, with this job here at Popverse, we're owned by Reed Pop, which owns a number of conventions. So I get to go to conventions, pretty much the places that I get to talk comics. Like there's talking comics and podcasts, there's talking comics and social media and email and stuff like that. But then it's like me going to the comic store 2, 3 times a month, me going to a comic convention 1 to 2 times a month. Those are the places where you can have those casual, unplanned conversations with celebrities, comic stuff owners, just fellow fans just waiting in line for the thing. And you can really have some amazing conversations where you can be confronted with things you haven't thought of, confronted with things you have thought of in a different way. And it can just help you understand what's going on in comics beyond just inside your little brain, my little
Totally.
brain. Yeah.
So we're gonna get into, the state of the industry, the good, the bad, the ugly of it all. And not only that, but we're gonna talk a little bit later about the possibility of Gwen Stacy coming back, and why I think everybody's falling for the okie doke, and Jonathan Kent gets a name change. So we're going to talk about all that stuff. Also, guys, later after this, we are going to go live again to do our Captain America Brave New World review. So stay around for that if you are so inclined. Smash the like button if you are
Smash.
ready for this conversation. We are going to have a good one. I'm really excited to have Chris on the show. I've been a follower of Chris's work for many, many years, so this is very exciting for me. Um, let's get into it. So right now, Chris, I want to start with good stuff. And I think there are some good things to talk about. And I think the place to begin is the quality of the books, at least in my opinion. And I want to know what you think about this. I feel I've been reading comics for 20 years. I can't really remember a time when I enjoyed them more than this. I'm enjoying my weekly reading arguably more than I ever have, and that's because I think the quality of books is so high. Where are you on that?
I completely agree. With what DC's going on several levels, not just absolute, what Marvel's doing, what Image is doing, what the independents are doing, what book trade is doing, like that Cartoonist Club book. I want to read it so bad. Manga is really coming out, and I think we're just we have so much good stuff that it's even harder to understand what is good because it's a relative term. Because the when I was at Newsarama, we had a reviews team that would rank stuff from like 1 to 10. Like a 5 now would be very different from a 5 even 5 years ago because just the quality is so high, or uh, at least just the tens are bigger than tens, the fives are bigger than fives. So there's so much to enjoy that everyone can have a place. Most everyone can have a place to find something that they like. That's led to there being, instead of just one comics fandom, now there's multiple pockets of comics fandom everywhere that people can enjoy their thing, and it may be something completely different than what it is before. It reminds me as an old person of TV, where in the 90s there'd just be one popular TV show. Now there can be like 16 popular TV shows that are each the biggest thing in different people's world, but they can be completely different, and that's totally okay. But plus, we're also competing with the fact that almost everything great from 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago is in print, not just US, but UK comics, European manga is always out there at our fingertips. And so everything is competing with everything of the past too, which is this daunting but great thing.
What are the books that are really tickling your fancy right now?
Um, I don't want to say spoilers, but I guess I'll say spoilers. I got the new Matthew Rosenberg book. I forget the name, but all his books have titles. Let me look it up.
Yeah,
It's
those really long titles.
yeah. Um, I apologize, Matthew, but it's a new image book. We're we're going to get them all, I believe. I read an advance copy of that last night for work, for fun, for work, whatever that means. And I'm really excited about that. It reminds me of the first time I read Deadly Class by Rick and Wes. Artwork is great. Really excited about that. I'm really excited about Tom King and Ryan Sook's Black Canary. I excuse me. I didn't want to like it, but
Same.
I was drawn into the first issue, the second issue, the third issue. Ultimate Spider-Man, really into that. Like again, I didn't want to like it. I've read Ultimate Spider-Man before. In the words of Tom Spurgeon, I thought I had read enough issues of Ultimate Spider-Man before, and but that is just getting me like really, really hard. Those are just the first three that I can think of.
And that's we're taking everyone down with us.
Yes,
The
thank you
new,
very
yeah.
much.
Yeah, we'll
And when
probably
is that
read
out?
next month, I
March
think. Yeah.
26th.
We'll
Yeah,
read it on Pals Pools. You'll get to it eventually, listeners.
Yeah.
yeah. People
Yeah,
should
that's
pre-order that. People should pre-order that. It's going to be great.
awesome. And by the way, thank you to Matt Fisher for the 4.99 super chat. That's a reminder that super chats are open, guys. He says, "Good morning to you, Cockney pickpockets. Keep it up. Until Doctor Doom marries Peg from Married with Children, make mine the comics pals." Wow.
There are layers to Fisher's super chats, and I am lost a lot. But thank you.
Yeah, that sounds like a issue of What the or something from the 90s.
Yeah.
I thought it sounded like a Rosenberg title.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
kind of want to read it. I want to read it.
While we're at it, I also want to say thank you to Uncanny Suit 97 for joining the channel membership at the VI Pal tier. Hope you enjoy your exclusive early access to videos and your emojis in the chat. And Ted H earlier, before we even went live, these things happened, gifted 5 Pals memberships. So congratulations to Kerry Tatter, Madness, Promiscuous Time Traveler, Ruben Reyes, and Bat Cato on getting those. Let me see those Pals heads in the chat. Thank you so much. Make sure you guys thank Ted for doing that. Yeah, so I mean, I feel like every space in comics is firing on all cylinders. You talked about DC and the great work DC's been doing. I think, the indie space is hot right now. There are more publishers than I can ever personally remember seeing. And I feel like each one of them has something really good coming out. And, and Marvel's doing okay too. Um, do you think the industry is healthy from that standpoint?
Oh, healthy. That's a oh, that's a hard one. I know your question was just about publishers, but with what's going on with Diamond and what
Sure.
we're
Oh, yeah.
still reacting to in a post-comicsology world, I can't use the word healthy. I'm sorry, but publishers are doing great with what they're doing, but it seems like it's much bigger than the publishers. And but yeah, like I'll try to answer just your question. Yeah, there's a great variety of publishers. I'm excited to see some indies getting some like big VC funding to hopefully make some long-term stuff so they don't enter the long pantheon of publishers that have come and gone that we all know by name.
Yeah.
And excited to see like Image continuing to thrive as not just a it's like a one it's no longer just like the Walking Dead um spot, but there's multiple things there. Yeah, I want to say yes, but distribution is cast the power like over everything for me right now.
Well, shit, then let's get right into it. We've been talking every single week about the Diamond Chapter 11 bankruptcy filing and the cascading effects of that. It seems to be layers upon layers of problems. And actually, I want to refer to a Popverse article right now that you guys put out a couple weeks ago by Graham. I think that's I've never known how to say his name. I've
Graham
been seeing his name
Graham
for years.
McMillan.
Okay, perfect. Graham McMillan. So Graham wrote about multiple publishers that have left the Diamond fold. He wrote about Boom Studios, Vault Comics, Mad Cave Studios, and Silver Sprocket, quote, have each sent notice to comic book retailers that they will no longer be working with Diamond in light of the company's bankruptcy. Of the four, three publishers, Vault, Mad Cave, and Silver Sprocket, will be moving to distribute via Lunar Distribution, although each publisher phrased the move in different terms. So I'll leave it right there for now. They're all leaving Diamond when it comes to their, week to week publishing initiatives, either right now or in the immediate future. Obviously, that looks really bad for Diamond, who continues to hemorrhage publishers, which is not going to make it easier for them to have the comeback be bigger than the setback, so to speak. Um, you sort of alluded to how the distribution problems are concerning for you. Can you speak a little more about that?
What's been going on at Diamond's a long time coming. It there's shades of it before the pandemic, but the pandemic sped some things up. People remember that for Diamond, sorry, not Diamond, DC leaving, but that there was trying to be careful with my words, like that was going to happen, pandemic or not. What Diamond's business is built on is by distributing the big two companies and using the profits from that to be able to distribute the smaller companies to basically be able to use that profits to basically grease the wheels to make the smaller publishers who they get less profits on at least manageable for them to cover it, to be the one-stop shop for people to buy comics from. People will say that's a monopoly. Probably is. It's kind of like a comic store. A comic store, your comic store probably carries Marvel and DC, even if they're not a huge Marvel and DC fan. Could be a big Vault fan, could be a big manga fan, but they need to carry Marvel and DC to be able to carry the other titles to have a firm mix, because people that buy Marvel and DC will buy the indies and vice versa. But once DC left, because of being very careful here, uh, Diamond's issues, it I don't want to say it was inevitable, but it became harder for Diamond to do business, to make a profit, to pay its employees, to cover multiple distribution warehouses, and at the same time, uh, Mr. Geppy is getting on in years, as we all do, and it's hard to run a business. And he famously retired before the pandemic and came back, and he's a workaholic like I am, like many of us are. But that's a hard thing to come back from. Just imagine if your comic store could no longer carry DC, but someone across the street could. So for Diamond, it's a hard thing to get back from. And then the pandemic happened. Then printing prices raised. Then printing prices continues to raise. Comic publishers, the big two, try to push off a price increase by reducing the page count by 2 pages. Everybody hurts, but it resists the overall price increase. But we've all seen the price increase for special issues and stuff like that over time. And then it seems like just time ran out for Diamond, and they had to take steps to file for bankruptcy, and at least because their debts became more than what they could pay, to at least pay some of those debtors, which you got to, some of those debtors are the publishers. Because when you pay for a comic at your local comic store, that money later goes to Diamond. That money, Diamond collects the publisher's money and goes to the publishers. In 2024, there were small signs, some reported, some not reported, that some of the publishers weren't getting paid by Diamond because they had solvency like issues. That basically the money wasn't going all the way back. If you remember during the pandemic, Diamond had similar solvency like issues. I broke the story when I was at Newsarama, where I think they would had to say they would be 6 weeks late, possibly more. They eventually caught back up to that. But publishers whose primary source of income isn't customers, but it's customers through Diamond. So it's Diamond. If they don't have that money, publishers can't pay their bills. Publishers can't pay their creators. And once that started really coming to the fore, like these publishers that you spoke of that we reported about, they had to go somewhere else. It's nothing against Diamond. It's just they had to go somewhere else to get money. Excuse me. So that's a very hard thing. Like you can see, we haven't reported it yet, so I won't break it here. But there's some publishers that have not found distribution outside of Diamond yet, so they are de facto sticking with Diamond until they can find someplace else. Their books are being delayed. I bet they haven't been paid. I know of at least one publisher that hasn't been paid by Diamond since August 2024's books.
What?
So, and you imagine how that can hurt a big publisher. Imagine how that can hurt a small publisher
Yeah.
when Diamond is even a bigger part of that. And then they have Free Comic Book Day coming soon, which, as I reported 2 weeks ago, has never been made a profit for Diamond intentionally. It's a marketing expense right, and a loss leader, and they couldn't at the time that they're in bankruptcy. I could see a world where Diamond could say, we cannot afford to lose money on this too for our creditors. So publishers are trying to find some other place to go. And unfortunately, the way the system is, I don't know if there's enough distributors that can carry all the publishers that Diamond carried for this long, Diamond being in debt. Probably the owners, this is just speculation, maybe not even pulling a paycheck for possibly months, if not years, because of this, trying to get over this bad times, which Geppy has been through before and it managed to come out of. But where will all these publishers go? Will they need to consolidate? That may sound like a weird word, but in the 60s and 70s, for a time, Marvel was distributed by DC. I'm not saying Marvel will be distributed by DC in the year 2025, but is there a world where other publishers join together in terms of distribution, not through a distributor, but through each other to get through that? Like you see publishers like Vault setting up a firm self distribution system, which doesn't sound like an ideal of circumstance. A publisher really doesn't want to get into distribution, except for Marvel in the 90s, but we won't talk about that. But can you imagine they want to spend their full time publishing comics, not distributing comics, but they see, well, to publish comics, our comics need to be distributed. But yeah, it's forcing a lot of things to happen, which are going to it's going to affect the two most important people, the people at both ends of it, the people reading the comics, people making the comics. Because if the distributors aren't having money, the publishers aren't having money, which the publishers can't pay the creators unless the publishers go into debt. Because if they haven't got the money, distributors, do they borrow money or take money from somewhere else to pay the creators so they can have a living? And then what does that, just a chain reaction going to happen back and forth? And this is a very long answer, and I apologize, but yeah,
You're good.
that is the big thing that I see. That's not even mentioning digital distribution, which is a whole nother thing.
One of the one of the things that we brought up a couple weeks back was that idea about the consolidation. Lunar and Penguin, I think, both said that if they are going to take on, there's only a certain spend threshold, right? You have to probably have a certain number of volume in order for it to be viable for them to be able to
Mm-hmm.
do so. Because, like you mentioned, DC, or rather, Diamond was able to, with the profits, be able to grease those wheels, have a lower allowance to be
Mm-hmm.
able to then put those books out. And my mind immediately went to, well, sure, like now you're going to have maybe not, Boom or Dark Horse, but an IDW, Evol, a Mad Cave, whoever else, maybe even a Titan. So they have to figure out a way to have almost like a joint account
Mm-hmm.
under one of those to be able to survive, to publish those books because they need that.
Yeah. I would like Diamond, even in the glory days, had a minimum threshold where a publisher had to meet that. Like publishers couldn't just go up to Diamond and say, distribute my books, and they would say, oh, okay. Um, imagine their threshold, because basically Marvel and DC profits help pay for the lower titles to basically have a place indirectly. With DC gone, I bet that threshold raises up for Diamond.
Yep.
With Marvel gone, I bet that raises up the threshold. But then you didn't hear Diamond of dropping publishers. You heard Diamond taking on more publishers, hoping they could make some world out of it in a post Marvel DC world. But they didn't. This is pure speculation, but I imagine if your two most profitable publishers left, then it's hard to make a profit with the other publishers. And I imagine Lunar and Penguin Random House are facing those similar things now. How many
Mm,
publishers can they take on while still being profitable? Because you got to remember, Lunar and Penguin Random House have only been distributing comics for what, 3 years? Like, if you remember a time before the pandemic, you can remember a time before Lunar and Penguin, a Random House for comics distribution. And you can also see how, for the people that have been reading comics, like most of us here for 20 years, they all remember like the bad talk about Diamond being a monopoly. I could, I'm speculating here, could see a world where Marvel and DC could say, we never want to be at both at the same distributor, because if something goes wrong, it's going to take down everybody.
Mhm.
That was theoretically how they talked about before Diamond, but Diamond became basically the distributor of last resort. And in the past 6 months, we went from having three main distributors, that's Lunar, PRH, Diamond, to having two, unless a third party buys Diamond and everything that goes with it, which is, I don't have the money for. Maybe we can chip in, but um, I, I don't know.
uh,
It's
but
it's going to be hard.
but to that, you're investing into debt. Like, even once
Uh-huh.
uh once DC left, once Marvel left, to make up that difference, there isn't that volume in the market to be able to do so. And so,
Hmm.
for me, when you said that, I heard, oh, so they they bought coupons, they bought other people's expenditures, not actual
Hmm.
product.
That's a very smart way to think about it. And to be even more realistic and pessimistic, what benefit would Lunar or PRH have in buying Diamond or
Right.
waiting until the dust settles and everybody leaves? Because what does Diamond have that Lunar or PRH would want? They don't need the warehouses. Um, they don't need the accounts. the accounts are already leaving. I'm sad to say this, but they've got the employees, they have the infrastructure. There's is the most valuable things of Diamond the free comic book day trademark and stuff like that, which never makes money? Is it the comic shop locator, which we saw someone rush out a product to replace that? Is that a thing that Lunar and PRH want to buy, or they are hoping other pieces of the industry will come together and buy that to make it a shared expense instead of just Lunar losing, I'm told, $20,000 to $30,000 a year. I mean, sorry, Diamond losing $20K to $30K a year on Free Comic Book Day and just being
Wow.
okay with it. Like, that's a thing. Like, um, I think the thresholds are going to be much higher, just to not to be mean to publishers and the creators that go with them, but just to be able to survive, the thresholds will need to be like higher for Lunar and stuff like that. And sorry, Penguin, Random House, like they may not want to take on 20, 30 publishers. I don't see a world where they can do this. Like they came into comics distribution because Marvel, like how many Marvel size operations are there out there? And I bet they're comfortable with the profits they're making from Marvel. I don't know if many other publishers that can offer them the same profit margins as Marvel, just well, like you were saying, the volume. And that's a difficult thing. But imagine a world. I apologize to Vault and anybody else that get into this. What if Vault, for purposes of this, became a imprint for distribution just of Image? It's
Mm,
happened before. Devil's Due was through Image.
right.
Other publishers have considered doing this in the past. What if they did that just for distribution? Um, but in that case, they might have to limit it. They might say, Vault, you can only do 3 books a month, and they have to sell a minimum of this. It could be a world. Image already does this in an effect. Image is a basically a bunch of smaller publishers in the Image Central unit under one roof. Skybound, um, Eric stuff, Shadowline,
Ghost
uh,
Machine.
Ghost Machine, Rob Liefeld's on again, off again comics publishing, like all those kinds of pieces. Like, is there a world where there's another thing? Not that they come in as partners, like that's a very vaunted thing. They've added one new partner in 30 years, but there could be some sort of arrangement if it makes sense to everybody and doesn't get their business, hurt their profits, and the profits to their creators. Like, I don't know. It's going to it makes like I think it's going to create some new things we haven't seen before or haven't seen in 40 or 50 years, which will be new, surprising, and different. But um, I think it needs to be to keep the comics flowing.
Man, Chris, I am so glad you're here. You are dropping bombs. Speaking of bombs, Atomic Hound dropped a 1999 super chat bomb on us and says, comics industry is healthy, kind of like me if you ignore the cholesterol, A1C, herniated disc, and chronic asthma. At least my back hair is thriving. Great convo as always. Thank you, Atomic Hound.
Yeah.
And Red Spiral drops a $5 super chat. Is Penguin Random House and Lunar carrying other publishers other than Marvel and DC, respectively? Yes. And that's kind of what Chris is alluding to, which is how many publishers do Lunar and Penguin Random House have any interest in picking up? Obviously, Marvel and DC are going to be the biggest accounts, but outside of those two and Image, where is the value in these publishers for these distributors? It's a big problem.
Yeah.
I do have a question. Like, do you think that with so many, with so little slices of the pie now, because of this, and Marvel and DC being kind of segmented when it comes to distribution, do you think that eventually that means they also have to limit their lines in terms of the amount of books that they put out?
Um, I think they already limit their lines. We may not see it because it's always bigger than everybody else.
Hmm.
But you can even talk about Dan DiDio after he was publisher, let out like he limited the number of Batman titles because if it became over a certain threshold, he was worried they would become the Batman company that everybody jokes about. Um, I think they do limit the number of titles. I think they have limits in both ways, like a minimum and a maximum, because in some respects, not as a this isn't a criticism. They are a volume business. They are a volume business, and they have to put out a lot. But I think their limits are based on profitability, where if they can put out 100 books a month that'll make a profit, and they have the bandwidth and the workflow, they'll put out 100 books to make a profit. That's totally okay. But I don't think any publisher has been in that space for since the 90s, maybe, and that was just a blip. But I think like everyone has their limits, and it's learning what those are. And if you go over them, like some publishers have in the past, like have a good reason to, like Vault. No, sorry, not Vault, but Valiant during the not the Alien books, but the previous era with Dinesh. Like they said their limits up front, and then they slowly pushed beyond that. But they had some solid business reasons, most of which they said publicly. But basically, why that made sense for them to go beyond their limits. Because of the key thing, you want everybody to publish comics, but the kicker to this is you want all the comic creators to be paid, and you want all the designers and editors to be paid, and so that's where limits come into play. Like limits can be a good thing. Like it prevents me from going bankrupt when I go to the comic store this afternoon. But yeah, long question, but yeah, Marvel and DC are the two big players, and how they respond to this is whatever happens to them will affect the entirety of the comics industry, not just the direct market, but even like manga and book trade, because they're the two like big boys for that. Even though they're not the biggest in book trade, but they're a major factor. Major.
But it's interesting because even from a P&L standpoint, like let's say you make better return by distributing your books. So DC decides let's try to hit that cap as opposed to onboard a Dark Horse, onboard a another publisher because I'm sure there's concessions to be made. There's costs associated to that cut into the would-be
Mhm.
profit. And in my mind, it becomes a question of do I care to make a little bit less revenue in order to keep another publisher afloat, or do I extend my line because there's the volume to do so,
Mhm.
and ideally make more return off of that to address the P&L?
That is a very smart question. Marvel and DC have done versions of this in the past without us knowing it. Um, Look at DC and IDW's Batman and TMNT stuff. Those were co-production with IDW. They were co-published by DC and IDW. They did one with Boom for I forget the title. I apologize. Marvel in the past have outsourced books with Marvel characters in it, but they've outsourced the Top Cow 10 years ago. They outsourced to Alex Ross had an imprint where some of the Alex Ross books at Marvel from 2000s, 2010s had a outside editor, outside designer, and Marvel just approved it at the beginning or end. At the end of the day, it was Marvel characters. But there is a world that can happen. DC, for a time, published Humanoids in the 2000s. DC, for a time, published 2000 AD. DC, for a time, have published other publishers through unique setups like that. In that it isn't just a clear just we will basically you'll be under our wing and I'll have the thing. DC wanted to earn some return on that, but they wanted a certain volume, and they said instead of hiring, okay, say DC wants to do 5 more titles a month, do they make the hard cost investment in editors and salary for multiple years, creators and all that stuff, or do they test it out through doing more crossovers with other titles? Like, there's a world where that could happen. Like, Marvel could do this. Marvel published an Invincible crossover. It was very brief, but they did stuff like that. And I'm interested to see how that could work. Or imagine if Some of the Dark Horse Star Wars comics were co-published by Marvel. Like, imagine if some of those other Fox, sorry, 20th Century Studios licensed book that Boom Studios has that are now owned by Disney, which Disney owns Marvel. What if they co-publish those? Like, there's options there. But then again, none of this speaks to creator-owned comics, which is my favorite thing in the world. And where does that fit in? DC got back into creator-owned comics with an asterisk with Vertigo. Marvel has come in and out of creator-owned comics when they felt ready to take the risk, and them going for increasing their limit. Like Icon was that, Epic
Yeah.
was that in the 80s. Like, there's possibilities out there, but it's not like we're just going to take Mad Cave and it's going to become basically part of the DC or Marvel family. Like, that would not make sense to Mad Cave, DC, Marvel, the creators, like all of those things. But there's worlds where stuff could happen, especially smaller comic publishers. Like, I'm thinking like a Legendary Comics, which maybe publishes 1 to 2 books a month. And they recently did a co-publishing deal with DC for the Godzilla Kong versus Justice League. Imagine if that just became a imprint, a wholly still owned by Legendary imprint. Maybe it was just a year where they did that. Milestone Comics was originally just a basically an outside company partnering with DC. Now it's kind of muddied, but there's a world where stuff like that could happen. But I don't. But still, that leaves the middle bits, the publishers not as big as Marvel and DC, but not super small, like 1, 2 books a month, like in the middle. Like, where do they go? And that's what I'm focused on. Those are where my favorite comics lie.
So I have a bit of an uncomfortable thought, and it's a thought that I've had for a while. We have heard that, and this is, scuttlebutt, but we have heard that there are publishers that put out comics from big name creators that we won't say, who sell, in some cases, maybe 3, 5 copies of their book in a store, and how there might not be enough bandwidth in comics in terms of raw individuals and buying power to support the amount of publishers that currently exist. You're talking about, I mean, I could probably name right now maybe a dozen publishers. Um, and that's probably not all the ones that there are. And so, at what point are we looking at a situation where Marvel and DC have so much of the pie? We're all spending a whole bunch of money with them. There isn't as much money to go around with these smaller publishers who are already struggling. And now this stuff with Diamond and tariffs and, X, Y, and Z. Are we looking at a situation where some of these publishers might have to go away? A retraction period within the industry that swelled just before and after the pandemic.
I feel like I'm the only person talking here. Hey, Cale, do you got something smart to say? Save me here.
You're
You're
on mute,
muted, bud.
bud.
Yeah.
It's been 8 years. I think we all know I don't have anything to say, anything smart to say.
Oh yeah.
I mean, by that description, like that's the thing that makes sense is where if there's no money, some stuff's got to go away.
Or what Sean, when you say that, what I think about is like, okay, well, if there's then some smaller indie publishers that can't keep afloat anymore, does then Marvel start bringing back Icon or Epic to kind of then fill, trying to like take that piece of the pie of like creator owned stuff? Now there's less there.
But to that point, they would first do like I think to Chris's point, first do those cross publications because
Sure. Yeah.
I'm thinking you don't that has an infrastructure there. Let's say DC and Dark Horse partner, they put out some kind of X book to be able to collaborate. Uh, they're also being hired, in my mind, not as part of DC, but their contracts, right? 1099s, they're there. And so if that's the case, they're not making as much money as they would be as part of the organization. So the actual money available to be able to put out those books, the creator owned under a dark horse, under a boom, under an ex publisher that would otherwise have that, is secondary to the book that is a cross collaboration with an IP or property that Dark Horse owns with DC.
I love the way your brain works, man. Yeah, that is great.
Finally, somebody on the show loves it.
I'm gonna say that, I'm gonna say the part that we all think about but not think about. Um, in the pie of comics publishing, there's Marvel and DC. If Marvel and DC gets smaller, the pie gets smaller. Okay, and that's totally okay. But in the other part of the pie, there's pieces of that pie where publishers exist that publish comics but do not have the revenue to pay the creators upfront. And the creators are taking the biggest risk because they're getting paid zero upfront for the promise of free copies, maybe something on the back end that if contracts are bad may never happen. And that takes a big risk. And in a world like basically, but those publishers, their business model works only if comic creators are okay with not being paid themselves, which is a sad, unfortunate thing, but it's also where comics creators learn. I'm wondering if spaces like this, the comics publishers that can't pay their comic creators up front, do those go away, or do they go to webtoon, or go to the web comics or anthologies or some other method? I'm sorry to hear that because all of our favorite comic creators, their first job probably did not pay up front. um, Image, even for the most part, well, a small percentage of Image, the creators still don't get money up front. They do advances now. I don't know if we're allowed to say this, but they do advances for some books, but other books they don't. That's why you saw some of those sub people using Substack to get guaranteed
Yes.
money up front, and then those were published by Image. But there is a piece of the pie that is publishers that use the money they have not to pay their creators up front, but to pay their printers up front, which is required, to pay their designers and editors up front, which is required to do that. Like in a world like this, does all of that go digital? And it'd be a loss for the industry, but it. I'm glad there is a digital for it to go to. Like that's yeah, that's like the part that I'm worried about. Like there's if you look at the amount of creator-owned comics out there, like I'm not going to go share this many secrets, but like some of the creator-owned comics you're reading, the comic creators entered agreement where they're not paid up front. Not that they're owed money. There's probably some out there like that, but they're not paid up front. And I'm worried in a situation like this where those publishers become untenable, and it just becomes publishers that can pay their creators a smaller thing up front with the promise of riches if it becomes a successful thing. Sorry to bring the conversation down.
No, 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 no. This is great. And it's I mean nothing here we're discussing is
Yeah, come
good,
on,
but
Sean.
like it, it just I know that we have an audience who I mean Hecatron said it earlier, he said, "Woof, this is wild. I haven't heard anyone talk about how deep this problem goes. So this is shocking." We have big picture conversations on the show all the time, but the listeners are used to us. They think, "Oh, they're bullshitting." It's good to have somebody like yourself who really is embedded and knows the ins and outs, knows far more than you could ever say publicly, about what's really happening behind the scenes. It's important that we, as lovers of this medium and this industry, understand what we're facing, especially this year.
Yeah, but let's talk about something positive, can we?
Oh, not tariffs? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah. I mean, I do think I think there's upside. I do believe that. I look at DC and I look at how well they've been doing Really, I feel like you could say, because obviously the last year for DC has been great, but I think you could even extend that out. Ever since Dan Didio was booted, and they kind of did an overhaul of their staff, it feels like now they're kind of getting into a space where they're making their own decisions and they're doing new things. We've seen how impactful the compact editions have been. Those have been great for DC. They're telling really strong stories, and it feels like they're also diversifying at the same time. Do you think that there are things that are happening now that we're seeing that are actually good signs for the future of comics?
Yeah. I'll pick on DC there. Like what you're saying is exactly true. Dan DiDio, love him or hate him, had a great basically guidebook of how to do things. But then he basically used the same guidebook for what, 10, 15 years. And it became time for a new guidebook that was in some cases an old guidebook. And Jim Lee and Marie Javins, who's knows more about comics than any of us here combined, was an editor at 80s and 90s at Marvel. She was involved with getting Akira published in the US for the first time by Marvel Comics and all this amazing stuff, has this immense track record. And amazingly, I think she's okay with me saying this, didn't want the editor in chief job because she has other things she wants to do in her life. She loves to travel, which is great. But she saw the need and saw the opportunity here to change things and to keep DC going for another 20, 30 years. And things like Compact Comics, which is based on a printing thing they did in, I believe, I'll say Europe. I almost said like Italy, but basically they're not afraid of, if someone else has a good idea, bringing the good idea here and making a longer term commitment. Those comics, Compact Comics thing, based on me on the outside, they probably haven't earned back their money yet. But
Right.
give it 5, 10 years, they'll earn back their money because those are loss leaders to getting new readers in. I was talking to a retailer where those the American Vampire Compact Comics has sold more American Vampire for them than the past 5 years combined. And you and I think about that. That's an old book. There hasn't been new issues out in a while. Hey Scott, like, what are you doing with your life? But there's good things like that. And then going back to the absolute universe, which some people could say, oh, that's Ultimates. Some people could say, oh, that's All Star. Some people could say this is what John Byrne and George Perez did in the 80s after Crisis. But the idea that they did, instead of basically rebooting the universe, which DC has a habit of doing, is they made a new universe separate to it, and going back to levels and volumes is amazing. And I'm very much a wonk. I love reading comics, but I love the business of comics. Think about this: in the span of a year, they created an all new Batman title that sells as much as Detective Comics. Not that they brought back, I don't know, Spectacular Bruce Wayne or some other third or fourth tier Batman thing. They made an all new Batman title that sells at the levels of the other Batman titles. They made an all new Superman title that sells at the levels of Superman. Wonder Woman, the Flash book, which yeah, I can't say enough about that. But when that comes out, it'll sell at the levels of Flash. Will it sell that way for 5 years from now? I don't know. But for right now, they've managed to basically duplicate some of their biggest hits by doing that and building up a whole separate universe for people to enjoy. And they have two universes: the people that want to have a universe that builds up on years, decades of continuity, and one that is all new and all fresh. And we can have both. People say they may not like reboots, but then we all go see movies which are effectively rebooting the universe every 5 or 10 years, and we're okay with that because it's the characters we remember doing some of the same things, sometimes new things. Excuse me. But I really love what they're doing with that, and also that that's not the only thing that they're doing. Black Label,
Yeah.
Chris Conroy, who's a giant inside DC and will probably be even bigger in the next five years. Katie Kubert, who does the Guppy, like the kind of the non traditional comics, and they together are the two editors of the Absolute line. But then what Chris and his team are doing with Black Label and then expanding that to Vertigo. That's really, really great. And then the classic continuity books, they're doing really, really great. And then there's this unique thing that Tom King is doing where he's kind of on the edges of things, doing 6 to 12 issue a mini series that aren't quite in continuity, but aren't. That's kind of an exploration of the Hawkeye formula from Marvel or the Vision formula brought over here. That's done well with Mr. Miracle and everything like that. It's him doing that on a regular basis, and that's the main place that he cooks, and that he's okay with that. That is really, really great. That they're doing these multiple things at the same time. At the same time, doing the YA books. There was basically an Aquaman one. He was a manatee, I believe, that was just announced this week. If it wasn't announced yet, I'm sorry, spoilers. But that's something they've been wanting to do for 20 years. Like there was an Aquaman YA book by Cliff Chang and Brian Azzarello in the works before New 52. And it never happened, but all that stuff is happening at the same time that they're able to get all these plates moving to try these things. Just it's so exciting. Very exciting.
One of the things we always talk about is that DC right now is having their cake and eating it too, especially with the Absolute and the mainline stuff. And it's like, oh, can you have your cake and eat it too? Yeah, DC's showing that you can. They're doing it, and I think the creator, like the creative led slant that Absolute has, is really appealing to me as a long term reader.
Yeah,
What Scott's cooking there.
yeah,
I think for me it's been the foresight, like the long term planning of that, because I feel like comics is such there's such a focus on the short term that it takes priority. You know, get the summer event out, get the next arc for a new team out, get the next number one out, right? Where this is okay, we've planned this out in as many places as we can. And to your point, everything came all at once. It was all a big announcement that to me smelled of, hey, I thought about doing this, and I thought about doing this, and I thought about doing this for the next 5 years because we have that ramp, that runway, and because they have that planning. To your point, Tyler, you can pick the right creators, right? You can see so far down the line that you can say, okay, actually, now that this person's done, go through this like talented creator or these talented creators over here, or we have something in the works. Now we just need someone to fill that who can potentially do so. Cool. You have X number of years now to be able to plan for that.
But one of the things that always like surprised me and I liked about the way Snyder's talked about Absolute is that they have faith in the line. Like Dennis Camp was talked about how he was approached, and he was like, "All right, pick one of these books. Like pick a character. Here's the ones you can't use, but pick one, and then we can cook something." That is awesome. That there's freedom there.
From all points of that. Yeah.
It literally feels like DC managed to create an indie space within their publishing line with superheroes, and it's like it's so smart, but it's so surprising how this is working out, where it's like, wow, how can I feel this way about Absolute Wonder Woman? Hayden Sherman's art doesn't look like what you typically see at DC. They brought them onto the project, and now it's like, wow, this is a sensibility I've only seen at IDW, at Dark Horse, and now it's here. It just really feels like we're in a special time. And not to leave Marvel out in the cold, like the Ultimate Universe doesn't necessarily feel as revolutionary. But you still have the Peach Momoko stuff, which is like radically different. And I Ultimates is my favorite comic on the stands. So both of these micro lines are, and you can extend that concept out to the Energon universe as well. They're all exciting. They all feel fresh, and they're doing something that I feel like we haven't seen in comics in a long time, which is bring excitement and hype to the week to week books that are coming out. Like genuine excitement. You can see it on social. People are excited about these characters. All the Absolute Wonder Woman fan art and stuff like that. Like they're bringing that idea back. It's just fun.
yeah. Like I think I wrote a story on this, or maybe I didn't finish it. But like in the span of 2 years, like Transformers and GI Joe gets rebooted to start a new thing where everything's fresh, everything's new. Absolute did it at DC. Ultimates did it at a Marvel. The Turtles, Jason Aaron, same thing,
Oh
that
yeah.
same kind of formula. And they hired an amazing editor and Andy Corey, uh, who did some great work at DC to do that. Like, and in most all cases, there's still it isn't the only place to get Turtles or Transformers or Batman or whatever. There's still the classic versions of it. There's still the Larry Hama GI Joe, Larry Hama forever for me. There's still like the classic cartoon Turtles comics out there, but this is out there, giving that same thrill when we go see the new reboot of the Turtles movie or the new reboot of the Batman movie. Like it gives that same thrill without the idea of where we're taking away the continuity one that you've lived with for so long and we're giving you this one. It's like an either or kind of thing that they've managed to do that, to have both of those things when possible. I say Turtles to the least, Marvel and DC to the most, but that they can do that and to push things along and try new things, not try something with a smaller book, which they do, but try something with a bigger book. Like the Peach Momoko X-Men, like I would guess that is the most risky book out of everything that we've mentioned here because
Sure.
all of us have jobs that work with accountants, and you imagine those accountants were like, "Where's my Wolverine? Like, we need to sell some Wolverine X-Men books. Where is that at?" For someone inside Marvel, whoever it is, that basically says, "No, we're going to do this, and it's going to pay off in the long term, or it's not, but we need to take the risk." Like that level of risk with an artist is amazing. And I believe they chose the right artist. Um, I've been at New York Comic Cons with Peach Momoko. Peach Momoko has longer lines than Jim Lee, Greg Capullo, anything like that. And for the people that don't understand it, that's okay. You'll come along. I'm like eventually, but just to make that kind of risk is very exciting. Not that the whole ultimate line should have been Peach Momoko
Right.
and other versions of that, but they made that risk and it paired it with Ultimate Spider-Man, which is probably the least risky of those. Still being, I'm like risky in terms of Marvel of, hey, actually letting Peter Parker have a adult life, but have that together was really exciting.
Yeah, I've seen how
Uh,
passionate those Peach Momoko lines are at New York Comic Con. Yeah.
Yeah, they're real.
Real quick, thank you to Matt Fisher who dropped 4.99 on us and said this is mainly to give you $5. Well, thank you so much, Matt. We appreciate that. And of course, Gavin Guidry, who is always with us, dropping 5 Comics Pals channel memberships. Thank you so much, Gavin. Congratulations to Canadian Survivalist, Least Mystical, Corbin Hideout, Byron Murphy, and Weedman Wade. Thanks to Gavin. Make sure you thank Gavin if you were one of those who was gifted a membership. And then we had a comment that I wanted to read, just shifting gears slightly. And I really want Chris to tackle this question because I feel like we've all discussed it a lot. Shahid Bashir says, do you guys think we see more graphic novels because of all this instead of singles? We talk a lot about singles versus trades, graphic novels, whatever language you want to use, and how important singles are to the industry of comics. There are people who think that we might shift to a graphic novel strategy for the reasons of everything we've been discussing today. Chris, where do you fall on that?
Um, that's a good question. I think we will continue to see more graphic novels. I don't think it's at the expense of single issues. I think they're two dramatically different products.
Yeah.
It is for publishers, it's a risk like issue. Um, if they're selling, if they have a Batman book, a 6 issue Batman series, they could decide, hey, we're going to make it a graphic novel, or hey, we're going to do it as 6 issues things. They'll get their money back sooner with the 6 issue thing. Sometimes it will make sense to do it as a graphic novel, like the Batman the World anthology, things like that, where it makes sense to have this bigger edition to start out with. I think it's just showing a variety of formats, and we're just not locked into one method of, I don't know. We only do it as ongoing series, which was until the 80s. We only do it as a limited series, or we only do it as graphic novels, or we only do it as web comics, and then they turn into or digital comics, and then they turn into print editions like Marvel has done in the past. That there's different ways to try things. That there's probably what 4 to 5 active formats that Marvel and DC use and other people use
Yeah.
to get the readers. I love the variety. Will there be shifts up and down? If we as customers basically tell them that with our dollar, then yeah, there would be. But I don't think singles are dying. I don't think graphic novels are dying. I think it's just more different ways to have things. It's kind of like when you go to the store, there's different sizes of the product you want, and we all want different sizes because like, each of our pantries are different sizes, but we can kind of have that in different ways. And yeah, the thing you want may not come out in the format you prefer, but I'm just glad it's like coming out in a format that makes sense. Like DC and Marvel and other publishers and creators have far more information than we do to decide what the formats are. Are they always right? No, but they're risking their money and their time in doing it. And I kind of like usually defer to them. They have more data than we do to make choices with their careers, their mortgage payments, everything else to decide
Thank you.
what to do.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
And even like the idea that like it's not at the sacrifice of single issues makes sense because like the single issues help the trades and graphic novels. Like the fact that Storm is coming out as a series right now. Somebody can be buying Storm issue by issue. They get that money quicker and faster. But then when Storm is collected, probably when there's a movie out that has her in it,
Yeah.
they can get a double dipping now in a different
Yeah,
format.
like I love that we're in a world there when single issues come out, 97% chance there will be a collected edition. Will it be as soon as you as soon as you want? No, but it will be out there, which is better than the alternative. And there's even a DC that printed graphic novels of like Dreamer that became so popular that they ended up breaking a graphic novel into parts and reselling it as a limited series. I love that they're
Yeah.
doing that.
We saw that with Primer as well. They did
Yep.
that with Primer. That
Just
was
about to
really
say
cool.
that. But
Um, Go ahead, Marco.
sorry, and I think that they're also comfortable adding new products like intermediaries from a price point and from a page count standpoint. You know, the explosion of huge compendiums and omnibus has continued to grow, but also the premiere collections that are coming out from Marvel, like they're adding products into intermediary places that you could fit in between. I guess if you're thinking about them in like levels, the single issue, the premiere, the trade, the hardcover, the you can keep adding and you can keep fitting things in there to ideally grow the I guess volume.
Yeah, we have things like Scott Dunbier's like artist editions, where
Yeah,
he just signed a deal with a publisher this past week, and there's different levels for that. I was just in a very wonky B2B thing where one of the big growth areas in publishing, not just comics, is those kind of expanded editions of your favorite, most popular things. It is speaking to the people that are already fans that you already have that book on your shelf, but they're selling the deluxe absolute essential, whatever you want to call it, like edition of it that has more of the stuff you love. Like it's kind of like the big Blu-ray edition of your favorite movie that they have that for your favorite things. Like is great to like add to the bookshelf.
people will double,
Energon
triple,
announced that.
quadruple
Yeah.
dip.
Didn't Energon announce deluxe? Yeah, deluxe hardcovers for their first
Mm-hmm.
couple things and like a special branding and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jack Cloutier says, as someone who doesn't like the floppy, I always assumed singles would go digital and trades would become more preferred for physical. Okay. So I think this is me talking, but I do believe that we've had this conversation many times. I feel like there are people, I'm not saying Jack is that guy, but I say this because he said as someone who doesn't like floppies. There are people who have a vested interest in floppies going away. And that is something that is a real concern for me because I look at the way the industry of comics, not necessarily like comics, the medium, because that will always exist, but the industry of comics seems to need the single issue to function. I don't see a world where your local comic book shop can make it work without the single issue. I also don't even know how publishers can, because you take a book like I don't know, Dark Spaces Wildfire or Dark Spaces Dungeon, that stuff that Snyder and Sherman did, and you say, okay, there are no single issues, there are only trades. Does that sell? Does Marvel keep going with Immortal Hulk if it's trades only and the very first trade doesn't do gangbusters? Do we get to the place where it's now outselling Batman? I'm not so sure. I personally think, and I'm dying to hear your thoughts on this, Chris, that we have to have single issues for the landscape of the industry of comics to function, whether people like that or not.
Oh, I completely agree with you. They're
Thank
not
you.
getting rid of candy bars to sell only candy bar packs. Comics, single issue comics, at their worst, are you're buying a storyline in 6 monthly installments. It helps the creators basically understand what the market is there for it, to get paid for it early, and it helps the reader to be able to sample a book, not for the $20 trade of it or pirating it online, but to be able to buy the $3.99 or $4.99 or $5.99 first issue price to try to sample the thing. Um, and I think basically wishing for the death of single issues is part of the thing where I think in some cases, I'm generalizing here, but they think if single issues die, will graphic novels get bigger? I think this is a case, like going back to our discussion. If single issues die, graphic novels do not take a larger part of the pie, just the pie gets smaller. And I think for right now, we need the pie as big as possible. Having single issues, having webtoons, having web comics, having digital comics, having trades, having graphic novels, having artist editions, having all those pieces contribute to a overall whole where the comics we want to read can be done by the comics creators we want to read in a way that is financially feasible for them to do this rather than, I don't know, going to be the designer on the new Spider-Verse movie, Chris Anka, like I miss you, Chris Anka, or Leo Romero, character designer for the new Spider-Man thing, which he would love to do comics, but hey, this Spider-Man cartoons pay more. But I think we need to, even if we don't want to support single issues and we want to wait for the trade, that's okay. But wishing for the death of that, thinking it will help some other piece that you're personally interested in, is a very short-sighted way and kind of hurts the growth of comics, especially like we were talking, I'll say 20 minutes ago about the dire state of distribution. I think right now we don't want to wish for the options for publishing comics to get smaller. I think we want to leave it as open as possible for people to try as many different things that can make money to for them to try things. And all of it will be collected editions, or you can just buy the 6 issues later on if for some reason it's not collected. Like you can find it, it'll be out there. But like wishing for the death of single issues is cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Indeed. Yeah. Matt Fisher with the 4.99 says there is a huge crowd for new stuff, but we want our comfort food too. Floppies survive because of familiarity. If floppies go, everything goes. When
Yeah,
it comes to the industry, that's my mindset. Yeah, I don't see it any other way.
yeah. Just if people are unsure about that, go to whoever they buy their comics from and ask them if they stop publishing single issues for 6 months, would you be able to stay open? And just listen to what they say. Even if you buy them through a comic store, great. If you buy them at Books a Million, great. If you buy them through DCBS, which is the distribution side of Lunar, ask them. Like, just hear what they say. Like, even if single issue comics like aren't for you, I think they're for comics. And it'd be like saying, like, I don't want TV series anymore. I only want movies. Like, that wouldn't mean more movies. That'd just mean less stuff to watch.
Yeah, J Sage says, who could actually want floppies to go away? Even manga do single chapters every week. Media needs momentum. Look how quickly people stop talking about Netflix shows that drop all at once. I think that's yeah, that speaks exactly to that point because each issue, like it or not, contributes to the. I mean, for the sake of connecting to this comment, it contributes to the momentum of the store.
Yeah.
Totally. Totally. Now, I do want to shift gears a little bit. We're going to stay on topic, but I've got another angle of this that I want to address. But before we get into that, I do want to mention patreon.com/the comics pals, where you guys can always support us. We are supported directly by all of you. And I want to take a moment to thank some of our patrons who are so amazing and we really appreciate. So, special shout out to our pals versus legends, Thunderstruck, Rebecca Alejandro, the Hound of Justice, Atomic Hound, Starcross, Catherine Stars, the Red Spiral, Spiral Storm, Adam and Bernie, the Best Boy, the Spear of Judgment, Jay's Jumble, happy birthday, Jay, Matthew Malice Price, and I want to thank Pals Verse members, the Night Stalker, Harris Dajinsky, Brian Demolisher Del Pozo, Kefis the Incorruptible, Momentum Mike Elliott, Dan the Truth Trudeau, Marley Manastorm, Slow Flow Dameron, Christian Uncaged, Always Laughing, The Spear of Justice, Izzy's Issues, The Great Destroyer, Hyper Viper 89, Robert Runback Cashaback, Pete the Dreamweaver Collins, James Just Jamming Jones, Paul Powerhouse Smith, Andrew the Galaxian Smith, Neon Knight, the Cosmic Avenger, Matthew the Shade, Cosmo, BJ Kicks, and the Living Blade, Bosser and Deer. If you did not hear your name and you know you should have, that's because we will be doing more a little bit later on. Want to keep the momentum, speaking of which, going on this conversation, but I do want to catch this additional super chat from Matt Fisher. Thank you, Matt, who drops $4.99 on us. They did stop publishing for 2 months, and it almost killed the comic shop model. 6 months, pack it in. Yeah, those early months of the pandemic where Diamond said, "All right, we're going to stop publication or stop distribution." That was rough. That was indeed very rough.
It
Now,
affected
yeah, go ahead.
it affected the comic that stood up the industry, Daphne Byrne at the time.
Oh my goodness, Chris, you probably hear a lot from creators on things that are happening in the industry. And I've been thinking a lot about the creator side of this whole thing because publishers collapsing is terrible for creators. Yeah, it's terrible for us because there's less books to read, but it's terrible for creators because there are less jobs available. There are only so many books that Marvel or DC are going to publish, and not everybody's going to be able to get work from them. And not everybody's, especially writers, are going to be able to get enough work from them to stay afloat. We talked to Kelly Thompson a few months ago, and she told us that before Absolute Wonder Woman was a sure thing, she was thinking about leaving comics altogether because of money.
Mhm.
So, do you hear from creators who are worried about the situation that we are facing right now with all these dominoes that seem to be kind of falling at once?
Yes, there's a lot of that going on. I hear a lot of questions. The last convention I went to was GalaxyCon Columbus, December. Number one question is they were asking what was going on. People that you are fans of, people that were former editor in chief of Marvel Comics, were asking like, what's really going on? Like, what's not like what's the tea, but like, what are you seeing? What is the next steps? Like, maybe I should turn this into an article, but sometimes about
Yeah.
every 6 months I do this thing like, what are the three possible scenarios like out of this kind of thing? What could possibly happen? I don't want to publish that and be clickbaity, but there's I try to do three possible scenarios on the business of things, and sometimes I have those conversations with creators just to kind of hear what they say and get their perspective, and because there's different things that they go by, like comic artists, for instance, like especially the profitable ones, they're just as concerned about comic sales as they are about original art sales because that's a huge part of their basically being able to make a living to do that and how that affects things. AI art, how that affects things. Different things like that. Comic creators are even like they live and breathe this, even though you may see them put on a happy face and draw some amazing art on social media and not really get into the nitty gritty about diamond of social media. Like they're thinking it and like they have a lot of questions about what's going on and they know sometimes just as much and just as little as we do, or sometimes can follow trends and kind of see maybe where things are going, but then some things come out of left field. Like for some people, what happened to Diamond in the past 2 months is a surprise. Some others saw this coming like I did in 2020. Um, so they can kind of see things going on, and they are very concerned about that. Some of them have looked into outside work, like Kelly has done. Gail Simone, like another person we got on record that said up until a couple years ago, like they had pretty much decided to go other places to earn a living in comics, and now they're writing Uncanny like X-Men, and they're writing some other stuff. So they need to diversify as well, like just to make sure that they're able to support their family, support what they need to do, and to have those things out there. Um, you saw that with Scott Snyder
Yeah.
when he left DC for the first time, and he went into creator-owned work, started his own company, and to do all that stuff. Like he didn't just want to be the new 52 Batman guy, as much as the new 52 Batman guy is pretty fucking amazing. Like he needs to do that, and him coming back now at DC, he's in a much better place. He is one of the showrunners on a new Amazon Studios animated series by the people who did Invincible. He has creator owned work going on. He has some other stuff he hasn't announced yet. He's able to do this and feel more confident in doing it because kind of the other stuff are taken care of, and he's not just worried about if absolute Batman fails, like I'm ruined. Like he's not in that place anymore. If it does well, great, especially for him, especially for Nick Dragotta, who around New York he sold the original art for the whole first issue all at once for a sum that would was pretty amazing. I don't know if it's reported, but I'm really glad for him to have that kind of thing.
Good.
But like still it's all a bunch of uncertainty because like what if the next issue like doesn't come out or doesn't come out as planned or there's distribution delays or what if I don't know, what if there's another pandemic or what if there's printing issues like if for like the tariffs which has been joked about, does that mean that comics will stop being printed? I was like, no. Marvel and DC print some of their stuff in Canada, some of the stuff in the US for single issues. Trades are a different thing. If tariffs become a thing, maybe they'll just print more in the US or they'll still do the current thing and they'll raise prices. Like either way, like Rich Bleeding Cool has speculated this. Like there's probably going to be an increase in the price of comics, and that's going to affect everybody, not just us who are buying them, but everybody else. Because if the price of comics changes and things get 20% higher, that means we're probably all going to start buying 20% less comics. And comic creators know that. And that's a very real thing for them. At the same time, we don't want to ask comic creators to take a 20% pay cut to keep it going. Like they already did that with the reduction in page count to keep the issues the same. They get paid 2 pages less to do an issue. Like they've already kind of like given their bit. So yeah, there's a lot of concern with comic creators out there that may not express it in public forums or in panels or social media. But yeah, there's a lot of stress going on right now.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine what it's like to be on the creator end of things, where, especially if you don't work at Marvel or DC, where, you're your own spokesperson, you're doing your own advertising, you're doing all of this to try to get attention to your books. And in many cases, people just don't have the money. And it feels like we expanded so much, just like a lot of other industries did, when we were getting those stimulus checks, the stimmies were coming in and people weren't going out as much and they were spending so much additional cash on hobbies and things like that. And now that we're in a retraction period and, money is tighter and all these things are happening, it's like, damn, you know, can we still support the industry that has sort of ballooned over the last few years? And I definitely worry about a lot of the creators. Like you mentioned Gail, and I saw her doing. She's got the I believe it's a Red Sonja book
Yep.
Yep.
that just came out, and she's doing all these other wonderful things that she talks about on social, and that's beautiful. But it's like, damn, I want more Gail Simone comics.
Yeah.
I'm glad for her to be able to do all these things, but like I want comics to be viable enough for people like Gale and whoever else to be able to just make that their home and where they're working and not have to take so much outside work.
Yep. Like I wish there was more opportunities that paid them what they deserve for Gail Simone, Chris Anka, Leonardo Romero. I'll say Alan Moore. Let's just throw that out there.
Yeah, sure.
Like there's a variety of people that if situations were better and they could make the right decision, they would go do that. Just like all of us here would probably, if working in a comic store paid really well, I'm sure all of us right now would go work at a comic store.
Hell
But
yeah.
unfortunately, it doesn't pay that well. But the people that do it, they love it, and we appreciate them very, very, very much. And so it's just a matter of making them to do what is the best choice for them. Because at the end of the day, the comic creators that we love are all people with mortgages, all people with healthcare issues, the stuff to pay for. They need to make the best decisions for them, which could result in some amazing comics, or could result in them doing less comics and doing more something else. Like we saw that with James Robinson after Starman, and we've seen that with other things. We've seen that with Tom King spend some time outside of comics, which is great for him. I'm glad that he's able to balance those two things, but there's just a lot going on, and there's just where's the best place for them to earn a living to do what they want to do.
Yeah, I think of like N.K. Jemisin who killed it on Far Sector, but then actual books is more where the money is for them. So
Yep. And they had a
Yeah.
pitch for more Far Sector, but
sure.
it wasn't the numbers didn't work out that they could do that.
And quick shout out to James Robinson for anybody who wants to go read more. Welcome to the Maynard. 3 issues out right now. Dark Horse, very good book.
Yeah.
That's so oh man, that's so crazy. Far Sector was so good. And you look at it now, right? It's getting a deluxe edition which is dropping soon. It's one of the compact books. I think it's the most recently released like book to be made into a compact comic.
Yep.
It feels like a big deal, and yet they couldn't even bring N.K. Jemisin back to do more because the single issue run of it didn't do gangbusters.
Yep. And you got to think, I don't know, DC's the bad guy in all this, but DC has the numbers, and they make a lot of good choices.
Yeah.
So before presuming that DC is just making a bad choice here, you got to imagine, are those numbers such that it's just not realistic that they could pay all the people what they want to be paid to do the thing like that? Like um there's examples of that all over where people want to make comics, but it's just not paid enough. Like for people big in the 80s and 90s, there's a Superman artist named John Bogdanov. I'll probably mispronounce his name, that's been out of comics for a while. There's an artist named Kieran Dwyer who did amazing run on Captain America with Mark Grunwald. Did an amazing run on Avengers. Did an amazing creator-owned series called LCD. Like they both wanted to get back in the comics. The publisher basically couldn't pay them what they needed to be paid. They went to Kickstarter. None of those Kickstarters earned enough money. They wanted to get back in the comics, but they couldn't do it because there's just not enough basically money from readers there to do that. And that's not to demonize us as readers, but you can see like they want to draw comics, like they want to draw comics really, really bad, but they also want to pay their mortgages, pay their light bill, and stuff like that. And because we don't want comic creators to draw comics and then be out on the streets. Like we've heard enough bad stories about comics creators needing money and stuff like that. We don't want to force them in that situation. But yeah, there's a lot out there.
And
And
some of that,
go Tyler,
I
sorry.
was gonna say some of that is like almost out of the spotlight too. Like I love Matt Fraction's comics. He does a lot less comics now because things pay better elsewhere. Gabriel Hardman, one of my favorite artists, does a lot of storyboards now, which is stuff that most people might not even see,
Yeah.
but it just helps put food on the table, which I can't fault them for.
Yeah.
And
Gabriel Hardman, amazing, amazing.
I wonder if at some point, um, as things consolidate, as maybe there becomes a bigger focus on Marvel and DC, one of the things that creators used to say was they get their launch pad at DC and then start doing their creator owned stuff. And within the past couple years, it almost feels like it's flipped. You get your rise in the indie space before kind of getting brought on to the DC and Marvel end sometimes. Now the DC and Marvel job is probably going to be that much more coveted for awareness, for that viewability. Like I, as a creator, now am part of that, and only by being part of that can I start and get my launch my Kickstarter. Whereas I used to have a Smash image series, maybe I can get on board with a Kickstarter or crowdfunding at that point.
Yeah,
especially
it's
with
all
I was
it's all like
especially
a game of Mario where you're jumping from levels to levels. And you'll see it in movies and TVs. You'll see it in old comics. Like John Byrne started out in creator-owned comics and zines. George Perez too, and then they went to Marvel and DC. Then went independent. Then went back to Marvel and DC, and then did both. You see people like Scott Snyder, who's kind of at the I want to say perfect place, but at a really good place where he is a big two comic creator, and he also has time for his other stuff. Jason Aaron, same thing.
Yeah,
Gail Simone, same thing. Like that's where it is. Like Scott Snyder, how did he break in the comics? Like he wrote prose novels and then got his break doing a Iron Man one shot for Marvel, and then got lured away to DC, and it became a thing. But every people's career is differently. Some people start in the indies, which Scott did, just not indie comics, but just indie prose, and kind of jumps back and forth. I think it's not about one or the other in rare circumstances, but it's about doing like both.
Totally. Beyond Wednesdays is with us. Good to see you. Says, think about this. Some of the biggest cover artists in the game only get $650 a cover from the big two to create cover art. It's not worth it to write comics these days. Total labor of love. They'd make more with one movie or TV show option than writing a comic. Yeah, I mean that is an unfortunate reality of the industry that we have at the moment. And I think what I always come back to, and it's again, it's another uncomfortable situation where it's like all these problems are solved or mitigated by more people simply reading comics. And everybody understands that, but there's not necessarily a like, yeah, great, I could say that, but how do we make those people buy more comics? And there hasn't been a strategy that has worked to in mass activate any sort of untapped potential audience. People say that more digital will get it done. I'm not sure I believe in that. People say more advertising to, people outside of comics will get it done. I'm not sure I believe that either. I don't know that there's any one particular solution to that problem, but I do believe it is the biggest problem.
Yeah, there's no one solution. I think it's a bunch of small solutions coming from different places, like Substack. People got a lot of issues of that over the Substacks, their money and their political stance. But that Substack money provided seed money for James Tynion to take the next step into what he's doing now with Tiny on the Onion.
Yeah.
Indirectly got that going. It got some other comics published. It got us Grant Morrison comics if you follow his Substack. It got us some Grant Morrison comics that he wouldn't otherwise have done. Got a couple Tom King comics out of it. Got Michael Avon Oberling to come back and do comics, even though he's largely in another industry now. There's it's not one big fix, but it's a bunch of small things. Like it could be back. Like there's a world where somebody mentioned Matt Fraction. There's a world where he could come back to comics. Like he loves him some comics. He loves comics. He also is fortunate to be a very in demand TV showrunner for the Monarch Godzilla King Kong like TV series for Max. He wants to do some comics. Like he really wants to do it. There's a world where that could happen. Like he was out before, and then he got back for DC to do the Jimmy Olsen book. Like there's a world where that can happen again. Will he be back writing 4 to 5 titles a month? Probably not, but we should be fortunate for whatever we do get him for. Kelly Sue DeConnick, same way. Greg Rucka, same way. Like there's places for that, but just in terms of like, yeah, people need to read more comics, but it's kind of like voting. Like, how do we as individuals like instigate that? Um, And or does it become this thing where we just assume, well, it's someone else's job to do that? Like it all starts with us to basically do that. Like I'm not saying we go max out our credit card at the comic store, but that sounds like a Saturday to me. But there's versions of doing that to put your money towards things that you want to support. Is it coming on the Comics Pal, giving putting some cash in here to support this? Is it going supporting someone's Kickstarter? Is it, I don't know, buying, like whatever your I'll put out a challenge. Everybody that's listening to this or watching this, what's your favorite comic? Great. Go to the comic store, buy one more copy. Give that to someone who you think would love it. What if that turns them into readers? Like, what if 1,000 people do that today? And what if we get 500 new readers of some comic? It won't all be the same comic, but get more people reading comics. Like that is like the way that's one of many ways to go, but it's not just one solution. And we can't just wait for, I don't know, some metaphorical Superman to come up and do it for us.
Right.
We can't wait on the publishers to start marketing their books.
Their
Yeah.
100-year old product.
Hey guys, we got ring mats in AEW for DC at least, so we're getting somewhere.
And that, to be fair, that was pretty damn cool. And I feel like there's such a huge overlap between wrestling fans and comic book fans. Chris, you're a wrestling guy, aren't you?
Oh yeah, completely too much. Like you'd also be surprised the amount of comic creators that are wrestling fans as well. I was at GalaxyCon where they at the last minute moved the AEW Saturday night taping to there. You would be surprised how Artist Alley emptied out, and we were watching AEW Pro Wrestling right in front of us. I know only Corbin Burnson got on TV, but there was some comics creators having a lot of fun watching pro wrestling.
I think the publishers need to kind of dip into that well a little bit more.
Well, they're trying. Like they, when AEW first started, they
Yep.
did those posters in a collaboration with Warner Brothers. Then Steve Orlando and friends did the comics through DC for that. I think there's ways to do that. There was the WWE license, which Papercuts had, then Boom had. I don't know who has it currently. I apologize. There's some great books through there that can happen. I think it's in some ways, is that a distribution channel? Like imagine if someone could get a deal to at every WWE or AEW taping, they had it not a bunch of comics, but just I don't know the AEW comic, the WWE comic. Like I have friends that run the WWE merch stuff. My former boss here at ReadPop moved on to the Fanatics and does their not just their WWE the World during WrestleMania, but basically runs their merch stuff. Like there's a world where you could get comics like in there. Like is that a in this kind of weird distribution thing? Is that not the place for comics, but is it one more place for comics?
Totally.
And
We got a 4.99 from Matt Fisher who says, to be fair, Sean supports the entire industry with his pulls every week. Listen, I don't support the entire industry, okay? Atomic Hound has that title because he's buying literally every DC book every week, and I'm not pulling that kind of time. But we all, we all do our part, and I think, spreading the gospel is definitely one avenue of what we as fans can do to improve things in the industry that we love, talking positively about it, showing people comics. But to Absolute Overthinker's point, who left us a comment that I definitely understand, he said, I did that in reference to passing out books to your friends. I did that for my entire friend group a few times, and they were just not biting, unfortunately. I bought them Ghost Machine Special when that kicked off, All In Special, and Absolute Batman #1, and I don't even think anyone read those issues that I gave them. I think that comics are niche, and I think that they are going to remain that way, and I think that they're not ever going to be for everyone, which is why, even though I definitely agree with the idea that we should see more advertising in, like, before a Marvel movie, like, wouldn't it have been great if before Captain America Brave New World there was something that said, hey, if you like this, or if you like the movie you're about to see, these are the comics you can buy, or if they gave us a free digital code to download these books, whatever it is. A modicum of people would do that, and even less of them would enjoy it, and even less of those people would continue to read comics. but I still think it's worth doing.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think there's a different. There could be different strategies. Going back to the point of the commenter, like in terms of always being a better gift giver, instead of thinking, I sometimes get to the point where what is my favorite thing and pushing that on other people. Sometimes I try to understand them as people and find the comic that can do them. Like if they like Magic the Gathering, there's Magic the Gathering Boom comics. There's a great Magic the Gathering manga that's out there. There's stuff like that. Maybe instead of getting them to become reading the kind of comics that you like, what if you can understand them more as people and buy the kind of comics that they like? They just don't know it yet. They would appreciate it because they would feel being seen, and for them to realize that you understand them and their weird curiosities. And also, I don't know, it could maybe you might like it too. Like, I'll give you a challenge. Like for the people that still use social media, if you are struggling to find like a book to buy a friend of yours, like tag me on social media, tell me what they're like. I will give you a recommendation. Like I will give you something. I will give you something to buy that's less than $5 to do that. Like maybe nobody will do it. Maybe this will help them think about just buying things that fit the person instead of trying to get the person to read the specific kind of comics. Because going back to what we said, like there's a lot of amazing comics, and there's a lot of amazing comics from 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago that are back in print. Like, I don't know, what if they love the Atari? Well, we can find them some Atari Force comics. Like, what if, like, there's all sorts of stuff out there. If they like their favorite video game, 50% chance there's probably a comic based on that video game, or there's something close, like, out there. Like, we can find that. Instead of trying to get them to convert to be Marvel and DC fans, like, nothing against that, but I think people are showing that they're getting their fill of Marvel just on MCU and then some. Maybe there's other stuff out there that they would like. Like if you like Samuel L. Jackson, did you know that he co-wrote a comic with Boom? Maybe we'll get them that. He stars in the comic. Like they had the artist draw him in the comic. Like maybe that's it. But we can there's comics like out there. There's enough comics that we can find comics for everyone if we just instead of waiting for them to do the work, since we are all comics experts in some degree or another, for us to do the work to basically help them find comics that they'll like.
You've got to meet people where they are.
Yeah.
Matt Fisher with another 9.99. I support the Comics Pals. To Chris's challenge, I do that every week. I'm an Uber and I buy a few extra comics every week, run trivia in my car for passengers, and pass out free comics.
Oh
Wow.
yeah. Oh
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Wow.
New lore drop for Matt Fisher. That's
Word.
it's like cash
Hey,
cab for comics.
hey, Matt, can you reach out to me seriously? Like, I want to do an article about that. Like whatever town you're in, we can get you some business if you're like the Uber for comics fans. Like, I know someone in, I believe, Florida that dresses up as Deadpool, love it or hate it, and will basically you'll get picked up in an Uber by Deadpool. But yeah, I would love to do a story about what you do, Matt.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
there's
how
a
how
there's a
can
Shrek Uber driver too out there. Yeah.
how can Matt get in contact with you, Chris?
Best way is social media. Just look for my name, Chris Arrant, or just go to the popverse.com. My contact info is at the bottom, and you can reach out to me. Just send me your like info. Shout out the Comics Pals in the message so I know who you are. I would love to do something.
He dropped another 199 and said the comic industry is like TNA, it will never die. I agree.
Wow.
I agree.
I would say it's
May
also in a boom period.
change
Yeah.
its name to Impact and back.
Yeah. um by the way, guys, if you've enjoyed Chris's depth of knowledge, if you've enjoyed his professionalism, if you've enjoyed his contributions to this conversation, check out popverse.com because Chris is doing great work over there, not just writing, but also steering the ship as an editor in chief, making sure that the articles are excellent, which they are. I check Popverse all the time for this show, for the stuff that we do here. So make sure you guys are going to popverse.com. There's great stuff out there. You know, it's harder now than ever, I feel like, to get quality news in the comic space. Quality news, quality reporting, and journalism is harder than ever, and it's getting harder. Like, not to talk shit, um, there's a
But
website that I use regularly that recently went through some changes, and that website is not good anymore. Um, Go ahead, Tyler.
As you say, with AI too, a lot of these things are not even written.
With
Yeah.
AI, with hey, we need a listicle every single day about some
Woof.
bullshit.
Yeah.
These garbage articles, hard-hitting journalism is becoming harder to find. And so Popverse is one of those places. The Comics Beat is one of those places. I stand by Bleeding Cool and Rich Johnson. I think they do a great job. But yeah, please make sure you support great comics journalism, and popverse.com is a place to go. Go ahead, Tyler.
Oh no, I got nothing. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Chris, yeah, if you're interested, we've got more show to do, not on this subject. We've got other things to tackle. If you'd like to keep hanging out, you're more than welcome. But if you've got to bounce, that's okay too. We've enjoyed having you with us so far.
Sure, I'll sit in. I'll try not to dominate the conversation like I have been so far. I'll be like Cale back there.
I think
Hey,
Kale's
listen,
gonna
we're
have some
here. We're
thoughts.
here
Yeah.
to listen to you, not me. We listen to me all the time.
Well, that's my job now, Cale. It's time for you to speak up.
Oh no.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about John Kent. We've been talking about John Kent a bit lately. He's getting a name change, and Marvel's teasing the resurrection of Gwen Stacy. So we're going to talk about all that. We're also going to do our Captain America, top five Captain America moments. We're going to get into number two on that. But the book club is coming up. We are doing Captain America month here in support of, in collaboration with Captain America Brave New World. We thought it made a lot of sense to put the spotlight on everybody's favorite captain. And so the winning book, we put it out to you guys. We put the poll up on patreon.com/the comics pals. We put the poll up, and you guys voted, to the surprise of no one, Ed Brubaker's Captain America. And so we are going to be tackling that for the book club this month. That will be February 25th. That's a Tuesday, the last Tuesday of the month, as always. We're going to do, I haven't decided yet. Certainly the modern collection, the modern epic collection, that's the first 17 issues. Maybe we should just do 25. I think that's a good place to go.
That's what we did for like East of West, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And plus 25, isn't that the issue? That's the issue where Cap dies, right?
What?
Quote
What?
unquote.
Oh, dude, come on! I
So
didn't get
I
to it
feel
yet.
like that's a good place, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Spoiler.
Well, what are you gonna do? So we will get into that. Remember, this is your warning now. If you didn't somehow know that that book was going to win and you haven't started your read, this is your warning to get that started. Chris, well, I shouldn't say it's obvious. I would imagine that you have read that run on Cap, Brubaker, Epting, and everybody who took part in all that stuff. Do you have any like reflections on that run?
That's a good question. At that time, I was freelancing for Newsarama and Marvel, so I actually interviewed Ed and Steve before, during, and after the run, and how that got turned into a Civil War tie-in by proxy. Ed was coming into that at a very weird time. Not weird as in bad, like just like everybody's weird. But after the previous run by John Cassidy and friends, and when he came into that, and how he really his bold idea to bring back Bucky Barnes, which may seem like the greatest idea now. Like I remember at the time, comics didn't want to bring back Bucky Barnes, kind of like Gwen Stacy. That's another subject maybe we'll talk about later. But people didn't want to bring back Bucky. But Tom Brevoort, who was the editor of Captain America at the time, basically, instead of just saying no, it's not going to happen, because he trusted Ed Brubaker as a story, gave him a challenge of basically, these are the things, the big problems that Tom has in basically bringing back Bucky. And can you not just get around these, but can you challenge these, that that it will not just be a one-off, oh, Bucky's back, sell a few comics and he goes again, but what is the long-term storytelling that can work to do that? And Ed took that as a challenge. Like there's behind the scenes stuff for months that I think they briefly talked about, that I was privy to, where he kind of came up with that and came up with a long-term plan that wasn't just a one-off comic that could sell great. Like I don't know, when they brought back Colossus in Joss Whedon's run, but then he kind of never got to the next level. Like Bucky, the exact opposite. Like Bucky was brought back, and it's weird. Like the biggest blemish is he was Captain America for me, but all the other Bucky stuff is amazing. And we're very fortunate they brought back Bucky, but just their process with that, and to do it with Steve Epting, very underrated artist, did an amazing run on Avengers Leather Jacket days in the '90s. Had his tour at CrossGen, did some great stuff. Then came back to do that and had amazing, amazing work that defined Captain America for us for the next 100 years through movies, TV, merchandising, comics. Like that was a great monumental work that they were able to do something so different than Captain America, so noir that fit Ed's style, but at the same time fitting Captain America. Was just amazing.
Sean, you're muted. I don't know if yeah. But yeah, no, I was reading the run at the time, and it's just like right when I started getting into comics too. So this was my gateway drug into Captain America, and my gateway drug into Brubaker, which Brubaker became probably top 3 writers for me. So this is it's gonna be nice to get back into this and reread this.
Could be nice
Yeah,
to explore.
with that run, he became top 3 writers for a lot of people. There was a lot of great stuff to go back to. His Wildstorm stuff with Sleeper, Point Blank, his older stuff where he was drawing comics, a low life, great piece, great book, Dead Enders, things like that, where he was able to just what he was able to do with that. Like he did Marvel work after. He did a Secret Avengers run. It's pretty good, but just that Captain America is people overuse this word, but it is seminal. It is probably one of the most important Marvel books in the 21st century that was been put out. And for what you're doing with the book club where you're reading through the death of Captain America, the good news is there's more Ed Brubaker Captain America after that. So you can go to the book club, read it with all your friends here, but then you can go on and there is even more, which is great.
Yeah, it's just a phenomenal series, and everybody needs to read it, whether you are doing it for with us for the book club or not. Like you need this in your life. Matt Fisher with the 199 says, Marco, are you ready to hear some Blue Train later?
Not my favorite.
Is this another jazz thing that he's
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
All
It's
right,
Coltrane.
got it.
Revolutionary Dragon with the 5 spot says, hey pals, I don't know if y'all talked about it earlier. The Image comic series Knights announced it's getting an animated series. I'm excited. I didn't hear
Heard of it.
about that. That's cool. Good for them. Who's
Chris,
the
Chris,
creative behind that?
Chris is looking around like I don't remember typing that.
Oh,
It's by Wyatt Kennedy and Luigi Formisano.
Okay.
Huh.
that is
Okay.
great news. Congratulations to them for making some money.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Hell yeah. That's a beautiful thing. Speaking of Captain America, though, we are in the midst of our top 5 Captain America moments, and we are on number 2. Our number 2 favorite Captain America moment. You can keep sharing yours with us in the chat as you guys have been doing every week. While you're at it, make sure you smash that like button. Marco, you ready with that number 2 moment?
Yeah. My number 2 is actually Captain America dying. We when we read the Civil War book club, it shocked me that this was a point that they were getting to, especially after the back of him realizing and reflecting that what was going on with this civil war, with this fight, with this battle was uh, no longer about them or no longer about the people, and seeing that his message or he as a symbol had been to some extent diluted and corrupted, then dying, it felt like the American dream dying in the midst of this, and I thought was a really good idea, a really good reflection, and um, yeah, that sticks out to me as a moment. So I'm excited to read that from a different context now, going into this book club, because I've only seen it from that end, from the Civil War perspective, not the entire buildup of what that looked like prior to, and then probably I'm gonna dip into some stuff after because I have access to Cale's Marvel Unlimited account.
Don't tell Marvel that. I can go. because mine's the same as Marco's.
Nice.
I wrote in my list, Cap gets shot. That was just a big deal for me. That's again right when I started getting into like the single issues of comics. I already done some archaeology of like my dad's collection and like Civil War at the time and stuff prior to that, Disassembled and all that. So I this like blew my mind. It was on the news, which was also like crazy. I was like, oh, people are still reading these single issues. The news is making a big deal out of it. I remember having the issue in my hand too, and not getting it for some reason, or if I got it, I don't know where it went. But like that was just a big deal for me. That cover of Cap's the great classic costume with those giant gloves that he has, the flared gloves, with that just bloody on the cover. It's imprinted in my mind.
How about you, Cale?
For me, mine is I guess not necessarily around this. It is the same era, but it's not the same moment. Mine is the moment Spider-Man turns in Civil War. Not to fight Captain America, but to join Cap's side. And he has to face Captain America and own up to fighting him and not outsmarting him. Like, come on, but like getting away, and he has to apologize for what happened and where he stood, and he has to say that he was wrong. And Cap says, look, you did what you thought was right, and now you realize the harm that's being done, and you're standing up for what's right. And he I think this speech has become a bit of a meme now, but at the time reading that Cap speech about the trees, and being someone who stands despite the wind blowing, trying to blow you down, um is to me it exemplifies who Cap is, because it shows he's more than just a representative of America, the country. He's trying to represent what America wants to represent. And that's such a huge part of Captain America. Uh, if you look at him for longer than 5 seconds.
Oh yeah. For me, my number two moment is when Steve Rogers returned during the Secret Empire. It's hard to understand sometimes when you weren't there for these things to watch them play out, but it was years that our Steve Rogers was gone. And he had been replaced by, a different version of Steve via the Cosmic Cube and all those shenanigans with Red Skull and Kobik and all that stuff. Um, and this was a Steve who believed in a dream just as much as ours, but the dream he believed in was the dream of Hydra. And he took that dream and he made the world out of that. And it was scary, it was horrific, and it seemed hopeless in a lot of ways. And so when you get to that moment in Secret Empire, after years of buildup, and our Steve finally comes back, and it's this beautifully drawn moment. He looks the part. Our guy is here again, and he's youthful. For those of you who were there at the time, you'll remember that our Steve was old. He was an old man. He was youthful again now, and he goes toe to toe with this pretender ass Captain America, and he beats him down, and all is right in the world again. I don't love what they did with Steve after that, and I feel like Marvel lost its bite after Secret Empire. This is the last time where I really felt Marvel was willing to go there, but man, did they go there, and it was all worth it for that final moment where Steve came back. I love that so much. Chris, what's your favorite Captain America moment, if you have one that you could rattle off?
Hmm. I'm a huge fan of art. I'm going to go back to Kieran Dreyer, 90s Captain America. He did great work with the Bloodstone Hunt, and also with the thing with the US 8, like Agent coming, him becoming Nomad, and US Agent becoming Captain America. Like to me, like Kieran Dwyer's Captain America. First with that, but then when he came on to do Avengers with Jeff Johns, is like the definitive Captain America for me. Second to that would be Stewart, like Eminem's Captain America through his Avengers run with Bendis and New Avengers, whatever the titles were, Avengers front. But those to me were the Captain America. Like that's like my dad served in World War II. Like Captain America in my mind is my dad, and like
Wow.
Kieran Dwyer Stewart, like Eminem, like he drew the idealized Captain America, like those old World War II posters. Like that is like the real deal for me. As much as I love like Chris Bacula's Captain America, that's an underrated run, but like those two are it. In terms of story, I recently reread the original Secret Empire for work because in some ways the new movie is kind of tied into that. And just to see Captain America as the American ideal to be fighting a villain, and it turns out the villain he's fighting is also the president of the United States, and he's like, well, I'm gonna punch the president of the United States because like it's America's more than just the government and its figures, it's the ideal, and just he was able to do that and that to be done in such just a couple people drawing comics, lettering comics, and coloring comics, and to do that where he basically fights the president of the United States in the like Oval like office, and it makes sense, and it's not just some wild we got to sell a comic this week, guys, kind of way. Like that to me is probably the one that sticks out to me.
I gotta read that. I've never read the original Secret Empire. Did you care for the Nick Spencer one?
No, period.
Okay. Okay.
Period, he said.
No is a full sentence. Uncanny Suit with the 4.99 says, personally, I'd love a book club on Death of Cap through Captain America Reborn, issues 25 to 50, basically. Give me Bucky Cap. I already know you'll say no. Uncanny, it's not up to me, dude. We can't do that run now. We got to do, the first bit of it. But if the book club, facilitates it down the road, I would love to read those issues as well. Those are great. That's a great piece of Brubaker's run as well. Flo Dameron with the 4.99 says, great show. Pay the creators. Fun fact, Brubaker made more from his Winter Soldier cameo than he did for creating the persona. Yeah, that is
That's
a sad
wild.
truth of this whole thing. And he's been honest about that. And I appreciate the fact that he's talked about it. Creators should talk about that kind of thing. It's bullshit. It doesn't even make sense. How do you get paid more for a cameo in a movie where you didn't even, I don't even know if he had a line, but if he did, it was
Non-speaking. Yeah.
right. How do you
Yeah.
get paid more for that than creating the version of the character that is on the marquee in the movie? That's bonkers.
Goes to
But
show you it's where the money is.
yeah.
And being an extra, I don't think so, Marco.
Compared to comics, it is, I guess.
Apparently, yeah.
Cardiac Solace. Go ahead, Marco.
Yeah, Cardiac Solace with the $5. Newish here, but really digging it, learning a lot. Thanks for putting me on to my new obsessions, the power fantasy. Definitely got to get some Cap too. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining. If you want to dig in even more, we have a Discord. We're always talking about books there. If you need recommendations, at Chris, or you can join us as well. So yeah, there's so many ways to get deeper into this obsession, this hobby, this love, and hopefully it grows for you.
If you like power fantasy, make sure you vote on the poll for Thursday's Pals Quiz.
Yeah, it's losing right now, folks.
losing.
What's going
You
on?
need to.
Yeah, for people that are fans of Power Fantasy, make sure to sign up for Kieran's newsletter. He just put out a new newsletter. It's like the director's commentary for that kind of stuff. He also collects all the interviews he's done on the subject that you may not be able to find on the internet. It's a great place to go. And also, if you like that, I'd consider going back to read his Dynamite series. I believe it was Captain Thunderbolt with Casper Winjard. Like
Yep.
that's a
Oh,
really
Peter
good one to
Cannon.
look
Peter
up to.
Cannon.
Yeah,
Yeah, Peter.
yeah,
Cannon.
Peter Cannon. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Tremendous.
good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's keep things rolling along. Now, real quick, if you guys will indulge me. Recently, I had a bet with a listener named Lucas. All right. You guys have heard us shout out Lucas a few times. We had a bet where he said that during our Fantastic Four trailer breakdown, I would crash out against Marco. For those of you who are unaware, crash out means you just lose your fucking mind, right? So he thought that I would lose my mind against Marco, and I said that's not going to happen. I'm in control of whether I lose my mind, and I didn't. So he owed me a comic for my victory. And what I won is next to me right now. I've got it right here. And I want to, oh shit. I didn't even look at what he sent me until right now because I wanted it to be live. This is actually way cooler than what he said he was going to send. He said he was going to send me a copy of Lex in the City, and I don't want that shit. But what he sent me is a copy of Ultimate Spider Man #1, signed by the man himself, Lucas
He
Hallner.
signed it himself.
All right. He damn sure did sign it. I told him the only way I wanted him to send me comics is if he signed them. So he signed this, but then he also sent a copy of Ultimate Spider-Man #2, which is not only signed by the artist, I think, yeah, this is Campbell, but it's also signed by Lucas Hallner. So thank you, Lucas Hallner. I appreciate your John Hancock all over my comics. And he also sent a letter. He sent a handwritten note. I appreciate this. Your handwriting is somehow worse than mine. But I will read it now if I can. Dear pals, I just wanted to thank you guys for all the work and dedication you put in. You always try to keep a good and positive vibe that I have since joined the comics community. It is hard to find a channel that doesn't just spew hate, and you guys are a shining light in the community. Pals Pulls is the highlight of my week, no matter the books. Keep rocking. All love. Sincerely, Lucas Hallner. Lucas, thank you so much, brother. This is amazing. I will cherish and keep not only the letter, but the comics that you sent. Thank you so much.
Sean, do me a favor.
Framing it.
Can you do me a favor, Sean?
Yeah.
Submit those to CGC just to really confuse,
Slap him.
yeah, some grader out there who's gonna be like, "Who the hell is this signed by?"
Yeah, some mysterious benefactor who's like a big deal, but nobody knows the name of. I should do that. I should.
Those
do
are one of a
that.
kinds, dude. Those are
Exactly.
We got the comics
one
bugs.
of one Lucas variant. Yeah.
Yep. Hell yeah. Thank you, Lucas. All right. Let's talk about Jonathan Kent. So Jonathan Kent, of course, is the son of Superman, and there have been some problems with Jonathan Kent in the sense that this is a character who feels like he's gone through an identity crisis, no pun intended, over the course of many years. Obviously, DC aged him up from being a child, part of the Super Sons with Damian, which we all loved. He was aged up, put through some really traumatic experiences, and then came back and was just doing the I'm the son of Superman thing. It hasn't really landed so well. And I feel like DC hasn't quite known what to do with him. Well, now they are making the announcement that, well, Bleeding Cool, I should say, is reporting that Jonathan Kent is going to undergo a name change. He will be known in the Secret Six series that is impending by Nicole Maines and Steven Segovia. He will be known as the Super Son. Now, Rich suggests that this is because they don't want, DC doesn't want there to be any confusion in the marketplace regarding who Superman is, because obviously we've got Clark, and they don't want people to buy a Jonathan Kent book thinking it's going to be a Superman book, and it is not. And so he is going to go under a name change. In the first issue, he's Jonathan Kent. The second, he's Super Son. He's also told that the comic's going to refer to Jonathan as Superman Jr., and then by the end, he will ultimately be the Super Son. We've talked about John potentially needing a different name, needing a different identity. Is this the way?
Anytime you say Super Son, I feel like a waiter's asking me what I want. Uh, you want the soup or the sun? It's fine. I mean, I'd rather there be a more solidified identity for the character, and I think Nicole Maines has been doing some great work with the character, even though like she's only been able to write him in like the more recently in the Absolute Power tie-ins. There was that one special that was actually really good that we enjoyed. that has me more excited. Whether or not we see a Super Son #1 down the line, I think we have the Summer of Superman coming up, so it's possible. But I do think they want to. I think wanting to have one Superman on the line when you have a huge movie coming out makes sense, even if it has to be at the, I guess, perceived demotion of John Kent.
Yeah, I'll have a Super Junior with no cheese, please.
Marco, I'm too hungry for
Um,
this. Don't do that to me.
You getting
uh,
all the cheese, my man.
yeah, similar to Tyler, I feel like the name. I think figure out who the character is first, and then allow that character to grow into the title, whatever that's going to be, because then you have to associate him with the name, the title. Where does he go from the Secret Six? How are you going to launch that title? So there's some stuff in the back end that has to at least get figured out. I think that I agree with keeping it as not Superman, right? We know that we're getting, and we know that we have Clark Kent. He exists. The even for newcomers who aren't familiar and maybe their only access point is absolute Superman. That is Superman. There's a Kal-El, a Clark Kent. There's some history there that they're going to attach themselves to, and to come into mainline at that point with, oh, this is Superman. That might be there might be dissonance there, and that dissonance will lead to some confusion. So keep it separate. It's a different identity. It's a different person. I think that that's totally fine to exist.
Man, this is dumb as hell. Super Son? What is this? What? Someone really pitched Super Son, and we all went, yeah, that sounds great.
I mean, it's an established name that's associated with the character, but it's just not his name. It's the title of the book.
It better not be his name. They better not be calling him, because what Sean said was they were going to call him Super
Oh,
Son
they
in the
are.
book.
Yeah, they are. I'm just saying the established name in terms of our recognition of it.
That's dumb as hell.
So I guess what Tyler means is that, they were the Super Sons when it
Yeah,
was,
absolutely.
Damien and John. Now he's the Super Son. Chris, I know that, you might not be able to say too much about this, but what do you think about the name, and do you think that what do you think about John Kent's usage over the last few years?
I really like John Kent's usage first with the Super Sons and then with what Tom Taylor did. I like the characterization, and I have hopes for that in the team book that's going on. Um, some of the logic behind the reporting may not end up being true the same way it was once reported that Miles Morales was going to be renamed Spidey to avoid this, basically
Forgot
that,
about
and it
that.
ended up being of name for a cartoon, but never for comics. I think it's good news they're not changing the character. They're not removing the character to avoid that. They're just changing his name. But we all here know it's going to be Jonathan Kent. That's what we'll know it by. The same way we don't refer to the 1700 Green Lanterns as Green Lanterns. We refer to them as Kyle and Alan and Nort and everything else. Like they're not changing the key aspects of the character. I think what they're trying to do is for the greater good of when people come out of that Superman movie in July and want to get a Superman book, how can we make it as easy as possible for them to find it? Like it's like, what if, I don't know, you came out of, I don't know, some Fast and the Furious movie and you wanted the book, but there was like things that weren't exactly Fast and the Furious called Fast and the Furious. It would lead to confusion. You would be disappointed. What if you bought the wrong book? It's not like you'd go back and go buy the correct book. They may never put that. So they're trying to make it as easy as possible. And DC hasn't said anything about going back and changing the Jonathan Kent Superman book to a different name. It's still going to be that. It's going to be fine. Like they're not taking anything away from us. They're just trying to get the naming right for this. We want new comics readers, and they're trying to make it as easy as possible for those new comics readers, the least friction as possible to find that. One thing I hope out of this is maybe Jonathan Kent gets his own series again. What that will be called, none of us will probably be completely happy by it, but the title's only on the front page of the book. It's not going to change the inside of the book. Like let's be hopeful. Like I'm glad that Jonathan Kent's around. Like I'm old enough to remember when he wasn't around and there was other Superboys and there will be other Superboys. But now like it's not the end of the world. Like they're not changing the character as far as I know yet. I'm excited for what Nicole and their team are doing with us. So let's just give them a chance.
Chris, you are being way too level-headed. That is not appropriate for this conversation. We need some rage out of you, a little bit of anger,
It's what YouTube craves,
tilt
right?
a little, you know. Let's workshop that title. Let's workshop what the title of the next John Kent solo series will be. This is what I cooked up. John Kent, son of Kal-El, super son. That's what I got.
Okay.
I like Son of Kal-El
You
right
just,
there.
is
And the
Rosenberg writing
fact,
that one too, Sean? That long title?
Yeah.
No, it's Tom Taylor. It's
Okay,
Tom Taylor.
got it.
The adventures of the Super Son.
That's probably what I would expect, yeah. I don't just call it John Kent. Like that's all I care about. It's the character, right? Actually, we should change all the titles to just be their government names.
Just call it John. Yeah,
Yeah.
just
I want Bruce
John.
Wayne. give me
I mean, I'd
Dick
buy-
Grayson. Yeah.
I'd buy Bruce Wayne #1. Has that ever happened? Has there ever been a Bruce Wayne?
There was that amalgam book where he was like Bruce Wayne, agent of Shield, but
Yep.
Oh my god.
yeah,
There's that 25-cent book. That what is it? The Death of Bruce Wayne or something like that.
yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
Well,
We don't need to get DC
I-
ideas though for another Batman book. That's for sure.
yeah, well, I hope that they can figure out John Kent because I do love this character and like I want to love him. Like I want to invest, but I just feel like they haven't quite figured out, they haven't cracked the code yet about how to make this character pop. So I hope Secret Six is going to be it.
Yeah, like I don't want them to do a John Kent book because there needs to be a John Kent book, and there's not an amazing idea that they're all excited about.
Yeah.
So does that mean that we wait until there's an exciting idea? I'd rather them do that than to force out some like we've all read those like, well, there's got to be a book out because there's a movie out and nobody likes the comic and it hurts it for the long term. So maybe let's wait for a good idea. Let's wait for Tom Taylor to have the time without everything else he's doing to do that. Or hey, let's get a new comic creator involved that has an amazing idea that everybody at DC can get behind. Like I don't want them to do it half-assed.
Yeah.
And Nicole
Totally.
Main seems like she's taking a lot of that foundation that Tom Taylor had,
Uh-huh.
like a lot of the supporting cast and stuff. So that's exciting for me because I really did like that Tom Taylor run.
Kurt Wildshut has been dropping a whole bunch of comments. Thank you for that. New name to me. It'd be funny if DC stole one of the names of Marvel's not Superman characters like Gladiator or Sentry and gave that to John. I also saw somebody throw out Sentinel. Those are all good names.
So he should get like a Nightwing, like graduating from Superboy to his own thing.
I 1000% don't think the Nepo baby angle is going to get over for this character because he's too similar to Clark. Damian is not like Bruce in many, many, many ways. And so I think people accept it more there. But when it comes to John, he's just like presented as Clark Jr. in a lot of ways. And I don't think that that's going to work. I think they need to meaningfully differentiate him from his father. I think a part of that is going to be a name, but just experiences. We need comics to come out that show different things happening with him for us to develop a care for him that's separate from his father. That has to happen. And it happened with Damien.
Yeah. They're gonna need to take a risk here. And it could fail. Like we need to be prepared for that. Like as much as like we're talking about Gwen Stacy coming back and none of us like it. Like I think some of us like the Spider-Gwen comic. Like and even Spider-Gwen had naming issues where would Spider-Gwen call herself Spider-Gwen in actual continuity or would giving away her first name basically be a thing for that? So they changed it to Ghost Spider. Like there's practicalities to that, but I want somebody to take a educated risk, but we want to not just force, I don't know, them to draw a name from a hat, but like I don't know.
You're right, Sean. Damian has the same issue because isn't like Damian, son of Batman, a book? You know, like it's his name really is the title of the book for sometimes. Or then it
Has
goes
been.
to Robin if they decide he wants to be Robin. But then Tim Drake's Robin. So
Yeah.
yeah,
But I just feel like with Damien though, he's solid. Like he feels like an organic part of the universe in a way that John doesn't. And you can feel the gears turning sometimes with John where it's like they want to make you care. Like his piece in absolute power, it just didn't, I don't know, it just didn't feel right. Like I like the stuff with Nicole Maines in the one shot. That all was great. The Mark Wade, Nicole Maines, that was all great. But in the actual event, I just didn't feel it.
And it was the same with Night Terrors. No,
Yeah.
Nope.
Crisis.
Yeah, right.
Whatever
Oh,
that
Dark
last.
Crisis. Yeah, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the one. Yeah.
Yeah. He's meant to be propped up as, the new leader, but like what do you grab onto? And even at that point it was also like where's the Justice League? Like let's move on from this.
Maybe there
Gavin,
needs to be a
go ahead.
change of scenery. Maybe somewhere where he's not just Superman Jr. Maybe it's, I don't know. I'm not saying put him back in the future with Legion, put him in the past or something like that, but what if there's a change of scenery where he can not be Superman Jr., but just be Jonathan Kent and someone has a broad idea to figure that out? Like, what if someone had like Tom King's idea for Supergirl, where
Mm.
Superman's barely not even in that book, but he kind of like he needs somewhere to go and have room for that.
But even that with that Legion idea, like, depending on your continuity, that's where Superman, you know, got his come up, right? Like that's where he figured out how to be the person the superhero that he wanted to be. And given that the future is always in flux, it's always changing. Like that's a perfect battleground for John.
I mean, Superman artist Gavin Guidry himself said time for John to go off world for a while. Give him a walkabout.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Take him somewhere. He has to find himself, and we go along with him on that journey.
Not that I think this is what should have happened, but what if it was John who went to War World instead of Clark? Like, what if we watched him do those things? What if we watched him in that situation, being a prisoner, having to rise up, having to face off with I'm forgetting
Mongol.
thank you, Mongol.
Yeah.
Like, what if we watched that happen through John? We know what Superman is capable of. We know what Clark is capable of. We know what his morality is. Put John in a situation like that and let's see how he ticks.
Then you don't get the smutty old, DILF art that came out of Warworld for for Clark Kent.
Hey, listen, we can always get that. We had those covers, those suns out, not suns out, buns out. The covers they did during the winter where all the men and women were
Oh yeah,
in
That
their
was
skivvies,
mostly Dick Grayson covers. Yeah,
thick butt. We can get that at any time.
I mean,
We
it
can
would
get
be
the
cool
Goon
to
material whenever. What?
it would be cool to see him like maybe not hit his father's greatest hits, but like a Mongol arc could be interesting for someone like John.
It levels him up, and I think that's
Yeah.
what he needs is the level up because right now that allows him to grow past his father or in a different direction than his father. Like even if he is the same person from a morality standpoint, a belief standpoint, being able to say that he can overcome as well is helpful to distinguish him. Even if he's just like that's my dad, that's who I take my ethos from, and I'm gonna live that. I'm gonna show that here.
I'm gonna tell people. I'm gonna tell my dad about you if you don't.
Yeah, well, that's what he feels like now is the problem.
Yeah.
MP, where you been, man? It's good to see you. Says, I feel there was a missed opportunity to have John take down Ultraman and deal with his trauma of losing his childhood. I completely agree with that. 100%. That is the story that should have been told. That's the story that I kind of feel like we're past now, but that's what should have happened.
Do you guys remember what happened to Jor-El? That version of Jor-El, like Bendis's Jor-El, that put him there with Ultraman.
Dude, I skipped town on Bendis's Superman after a while. I had
Huh.
to.
I'm
So I
trying to
don't
think of
know.
like I don't know outer space Superman who has Jor El in his ear like Alfred.
Hmm.
I can't
Lots of
give away
interesting
free work.
possibilities. We'll have to leave it to DC, and hopefully Nicole Maines has some fun stuff up her sleeve. What does Marvel have up its sleeve when it comes to Gwen Stacy? Marvel put out an image this week, a teaser image that was done by Paco Medina and Maury Howell. And it's just Gwen's gravesite, a shovel there, and an individual standing over it, and you can see their shadow but not their body. May 2025, with more information theoretically to come next week. Now, look, I have been reading Marvel comics for 20 years now, and Jean Grey is my favorite character. What I am saying when I say that is, I have fallen for the bullshit multiple times. All right? I have fallen for the teaser image. Oh my God, Jean Grey's coming back. I can't wait. Only for it to be a clone. Only for her to die at the end of the arc. Only for it to be her as a kid. Only for it to be a flashback. Like all of those things, right? So when I see this, and I see the conversations going on in our Discord where people are buying into this and saying how angry they are, I'm like, wait a second. Don't you know that this is the Marvel playbook? Don't you know that they've done this with Gwen and and Jean and even Uncle Ben 50 million times?
As a famous American once said, "Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, can't be fooled again." That's how I feel about Gwen Stacy coming back rumors. Like she's essentially back already with Ghost Spider or Spider Girl Woman, whatever they decide to call her at any given moment. Just bring her in the main continuity. She's like in the TVA right now or something like that. Um, just give her that book and then we can get it over with. And like have Peter like they won't let Peter interact with her ever really outside of like a Spider Verse event because they're like, oh, that's too close to Peter having Gwen back, and there's like probably a weird problematic age gap there. Honestly, at this point, just bring her back in some way so I can stop hearing about this.
But why bother? You do have the Ghost Spider, right? Like so like now you have to build rationale for that. Now you have to figure out, okay, what do these two people exist as separate individual entities? Like what's going on?
Why bother? You could pop a number for an issue. That's why.
Oh, yeah.
Gavin Gindry says the shadow is George Stacy. He's the one who returns.
Oh.
Interesting.
I like that idea. That's fun.
I thought the
Okay.
shadow looked like Spider Boy. Heel turn.
I think they
But
could
it's
subvert this. Like every Spider-Man writer, once they write enough Spider-Man books, has to do a return of Gwen Stacy. We saw JMS do it. We saw Dan
Yeah.
Slott do it. Like countless other people have done it. Like there's been teases of it before, and they've put out these teasers. Like Marvel knows how we're going to respond to this. Like what's going on in the Reddits and the chats. Like this is why they're doing that. Is because we are knowing that we react this way and we get excited to this thing. Like when people said they were killing off Captain America, like I was there. People reacted the same way. Can't believe they're doing it. It's going to be horrible. They're bringing back Bucky. This is the worst thing ever. Bucky's been dead for this long. I'm not saying if they bring back Gwen Stacy that it's going to be Gwen Stacy Summer Soldier. Yeah, I'm not saying that. But just imagine the ways they could go with this. What if it's Gwen Stacy's father? What if that Spider Gwen dealing with finding out that basically really digging into the fact that an alternate version of her basically died and them dealing with the consequences, like some movie with clones and time travel. There could be something there. Like I do think that Marvel is knowingly triggering us in all the right and wrong ways, but I don't know. Maybe I'm too level headed, but I want to see this play out. But at the same time, I read through when JMS brought back Gwen Stacy and that horrible storyline. But let's see where it goes.
That's since passed. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, let's keep it past. Keep
yeah.
keep
Yeah.
it right there.
I'm a sins past apologist. I don't know why, but I thought it was
Same.
pretty good. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you guys just Nick Spencer at this point?
It's just, it's something that adds personality to Gwen that
Ooh. Ooh.
listen, it's not good. The personality in that moment's not good. But how many times have we seen Peter in a shitty situation? Like,
And also, like, realistically, what was Gwen's character as a character when she was alive and being published month over month? Like, there wasn't a ton there. So it does put some dirt on her. It makes her a more full person. My only
yeah.
problem with it was that the story played out posthumously, so she wasn't there to be an actor in it. But it wasn't about her, it was about Peter.
If anything, just give me something where Gwen has agency for once.
Yep.
I am team leave Gwen dead in mainline. Um I just don't I don't know. Like there are a lot of ways they can go. I think Gwen's uh, death is a shadow that looms large over Peter. And on some level, not that it's negated, but it kind of takes away from the like this life that Peter lives is dangerous to people around him if Gwen and Uncle Ben are not dead.
Permanently.
Yeah.
Nah, man, hand me the shovel, dude. There's nothing sacred in comics anymore. It's all
America
right.
wants to
It's
bring back Uncle
okay.
Ben too.
It's all right. Just do it. It's fine.
If it doesn't go right, they can always kill her again or retcon it out. They've done it
They'll
before. Like,
they'll put her back. Like,
Yeah, yeah, that's it. It's fine. Pop her out, see what's up. Nah, it actually didn't go well. Throw her back in.
That's so sad though. Like the only thing worse than bringing Gwen back is killing her again. Like I don't want to see that.
He can relive it again in this life
He's
again.
literally doing that in the comic right now.
Yeah, like it's we're reading the eight deaths of Spider-Man right now, but it's gonna be the eight fucking deaths of Gwen Stacy soon. Like, let her be.
Activated her latent mutant ability, dude.
Also, are they in the same cemetery from Craven's Last Hunt? Like everything looks like that when it comes to cemeteries and comics.
yep.
Hell yeah, they want you thinking about that. I'm sure.
Spider-Man has a plot for all his mistakes.
Jay
Jay,
Sage nailed
you
it. Go for it, Cale.
Jay Sage says, "Hey, maybe she'll go with Paul."
Exactly.
Honestly, yeah, let's do it. I'm in
Do
now.
it.
I'm
Do
in.
it.
Imagine that fucking reality. MJ and Paul, if you're reading all new Venom, they're having some marital problems. What if he does the dip and he gets with his new bae, the newly resurrected Gwen Stacy? Imagine the explosion on the internet.
Whoa. I mean, I'm just saying it's 2025. Rent prices are really big. Sometimes people need to be in, pairs of three at this point.
Listen,
So,
you got to rob Peter to pay Paul.
Oh,
oh no, Kale, you didn't talk all show, and then you come up with that. You were just you were cooking.
Saves it
Coming
up.
coming out here with bangers.
Real religious ones too, which is in line for you.
Oh man, that's the line of the show. Um, oh my goodness. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, I do think that this run is going to need some heat. It's going to need some heat. It's going to need some excitement. And that, I mean, that's a way to get people talking. No doubt about it. We all hated the way they killed Miss Marvel and how that all went. But we sure as hell did talk about it constantly.
Yeah, but like frustrated. I guess all press is good press.
It helped the show.
Yeah, it did.
But the thing is that that's what Marvel does. That's their exact strategy. And it's not just them. Jeanette Kahn, it's a quote I'll never forget. She said, "We we know what's going to upset you and we use it like a lever. Like we
Yep.
we pull those levers when we need to because you will buy comics when you're unhappy with what's happening in them."
I can't believe they would do this. Ah.
Yeah, some of our greatest stories are built on frustrating premises. Like if you like Hal Jordan as Parallax, then people in the 90s had immense feelings about that would be an uproar about that. Okay, Captain America. What if they what if they killed him off and replaced him with three stray people and then 20 years later decided, hey, we're going to bring him back and retcon the whole thing? That sounds horrible, doesn't it? That happened. That is Captain America joining the Avengers in 1964.
Hmm.
Like they can be retconned in weird ways, but somehow it works out. It could go horribly wrong, but then it could not. Like there's ways. Like go back to the internet of before Bucky Barnes was brought back. Like people in a very much similar kind of type of thing, and they had attempted to bring Bucky back before, and then didn't, and then it worked, and then it all made sense. Like this is a very risky thing Marvel is doing. It could not pay off. It could pay off. We'll see.
Yeah, it's comics where I can imagine what the Warren Ellis forums were like when that Bucky stuff happened.
Yeah, CBR forums are wild back then.
Oh my God, dude. I lived on those forums back in those days, man. I remember when Civil War was coming out,
Yep.
and you had the one camp who said, "This fucking sucks. Keep politics out of my comics." You had the other side that said, "This isn't going deep enough. Comic book writers don't know how to do political stories." And then you had people saying, "This sucks because these characters are all out of character." And you had me at 15 going, "I just think this shit is cool. I don't know, man."
It's that Marge
It's
thing. I just
all
think it's neat. Yeah.
it's all generations. Go back to 60s and 70s Marvel comics, especially Fantastic Four. You'll see George R. R. Martin complaining loudly about Fantastic Four, and
Oh,
it
wow.
turned out okay.
That's crazy. Yeah, we've seen I was doing we did a deep dive conversation about um Alan Moore's Twilight of the Superheroes. And I had to use the Wayback Machine and like dig into the history of the internet to find some of that shit. And I found a comment from a young Al Ewing.
Yep,
Crazy.
That's
all
awesome.
that is out there.
Yep. It's almost like they were fans when they were kids, and now they're the ones telling the stories and driving the ship. Gotta love it.
Good
Um,
stuff.
I want to take a quick moment to thank the rest of the patrons that we need to shout out here. Again, patreon.com/slash the comics palace. Thank you all so much for the support. We really appreciate it. The Grand Alchemist, Chop Harder Alchemist, John Barrier B, Doomsday, David Melendez Doria, Steve Swarm Canaris, Panda v Panda, Ted Wong, Mad Max, the Absolute Overthinker, Blur, Jekyll Jose, Kobe the Crafter, Scripture, the Wardens of the Word, Hecatron, Amin, Almighty Perez, Houston, the what was it, Marco? The
Century Cowboy.
there you go. Uh, and Jasper Eddie, your origin will be coming next week. And also, of course, Electrics. Thank you all so much. We really appreciate it. Chris, we've had a massive conversation, industry spanning conversation. I would love for you to have the last word as far as the three things, I guess, you would like to see or are hopeful about in 2025 in the comics industry.
Wow, that's a big thing. Let's be wild.
Yeah.
I'd like to see everybody tell comics creators how they appreciate them, whether that's online, whether that's in person at a convention. Like to see people do that. I'd like to see comic creators tell other comic creators that they already do. Fans already do this, but just do it a little more. Doesn't hurt you, doesn't cost you anything. Just tell them through that. Like we're all in a difficult experience right now in comics, in life, and everything. I think that'd be really beneficial. Two is I hope this diamond thing, while it is uh, going down, I hope it lands as neatly as possible, and maybe there's something positive coming out of this. Sorry. Um, Three is I want to see more Chris Bacalo comics in the year 2025.
Yeah.
Don't know what that means. I know he's changed a lot. He's had some family changes. He's no longer Marvel exclusive anymore. I'd like to see what that is. I'd like to see something that he's excited about it in a way that we've seen when he's really on his game, like not just Generation X or Steampunk, but like other times, like he loves in some Lizard storylines in Spider-Man, but like I'd love for him to find something that's personally exciting to him. I think there is a third act for Chris Bocculo that I don't know, I'd personally be amazed for. I'd love to see that happen.
I'm with you there. I'm a big fan of his as well. The Gen X stuff is amazing.
Yeah, and he's doing conventions now. So if he is at a convention you're at, please go up and meet him. Even if you don't have money to get a sketch or whatever, or sign something, he can sign anything. True story. Like if you don't have a comic of theirs, you can just have them sign a piece of paper, sign something, like sign a comic that isn't theirs. Like Sean here has fan signed comics for him, and like he slabs them with CGC. Like get Chris Bocculo to sign something for you. Like even if you're not a fan of signatures, like if you have the signatures, it will remind you of the moment you met Chris Bocculo or some other comic creator. Just you have some physical memento of that. That's what I would encourage for people.
I love that. I think spreading positivity, giving people their flowers. Like honestly, it's so important. It's so important. You can't eat compliments, but they feel good. And in an era right now where there's a lot of uncertainty, comic book creators just knowing that you love what they do is a big thing for them because they are so passionate about this. The last question, Chris, before we cut out of here, I really got to ask you this. What are your thoughts on the state of comic book journalism? I know that's a big question, and obviously you were at the forefront of that. So as much as you feel comfortable being honest, what are your thoughts?
Wow, how much time you got? Um, sorry, I've been doing comics journalism part time since 2005, full time since around 2010. What I do now at Popverse like isn't full time comics journalism. We cover movies, TV, lit, gaming, all this other stuff. We do comics coverage where we can. It's not enough, not as much as I want, not as much as people want. The same way Tom Taylor would probably love to write Superboy every day of the week. Like he has time for other stuff. But where comics journalism is now is it's a precarious place because just like comics, like people just assume it's out there, and it's not as comics journalism isn't as great as any of us want. I think we'll all agree with that. Like, but do we? But nobody's paying for it. Like, we don't pay for Wizard magazine anymore, or the comics or buyer's guide or something like that. And we assume other people are paying for it through ads and stuff like that. But in many cases, they're not. Some of the greatest comics journalism going on right now is what Heidi and team do with Comics Beat. It's what David and team do at Sketched. It's what the great team of the Comics Journal does. It's what my colleague Tiffany does with Comics Courier. It's podcasts like this. Like we would all love to do more of it. Like Cale gets paid by the word. So like if we have more contributors here, Cale would speak more. Cale would do a Cale centric podcast
You guys are
about
magic.
stuff. See? But
Ten
like,
bucks.
see, $10. So if we can find a way to support comics journalism more, there will be more comics journalism. And yes, I know there's hesitance too. Says, well, I'll wait till it's good and then I will support it. If we do that, it will never be good. At the same time, like you see, like some of the best comics journalism in the world over the past 20 years, sadly, has been volunteer journalism, or them not being paid as much as it is for right now. And as we know, doing it for free for volunteering, like the fire for that only lasts so long. Then mortgages and power bills come in where you got to do other stuff. But on the positive side, there's a lot of good comics journalism just going on despite this. There's a great social media account called Manga Mokura that does some amazing manga journalism. It's great. There's great podcasts and YouTube shows going on. There's great written comics journalism going on. And we need to support that. We need to protect that at all costs. We need to help them get to places to be better. While we could talk about what we don't have, I think it's just important to talk about what we do have and to encourage that. Like I did less comics journalism reporting in 2024 than I did any of the years past because editor in chief job, it was more in doing in chief stuff than doing like I'm like editor stuff. But here now in 2025, I'm carving out a space to write about comics more. Does that mean I'm covering every new book DC and Marvel announces? No, I'd rather spend like there's other places doing that, including DC and Marvel covering it on their website. So what I'm looking at is writing about stuff that's not being written about in different ways, about like free comic book day, about my favorite comics, about how comic book stores are the lifeblood of comics that we all take for granted, about how comics flatters are severely basically underrated and are a big thing, and just amazing things going on in comics that those stories may not be getting out there that we want to encourage to be out there. So I would say just for people that want to see good comics journalism, find the best comics journalism going now and just support that however it means. If you can donate to their Patreons, if you can support their website, become a member like you can for Comics Pals, like you can for Popverse, different ways to support that and let them know, and they will be encouraged to do more. Like when I went to GalaxyCon Columbus in December, like talking with comic creators and fans gave me the boldness to stay up all night and write 3 or 4 comics pieces that I wouldn't. And like it's just finding more time for that and knowing there's people out there reading it, not in the tens or hundreds, but in the thousands. Because believe me, if Comics Pals does like when they do the book club on Captain America on that storyline, if it becomes the best, the most watched Comics Pals episode of all time, you better believe that Sean and everyone else will go back and do that second Cap storyline that someone in the comments here mentioned. So, like, if you can find a version of that for websites, for podcasts, for YouTube, stuff like that, is to do that and support that because we hear not just the people that call ourselves comics journalists, but Sean, Tyler, Cale, everybody here like wants to do more, but it's just a matter of just like, are people listening? Are people basically giving us the room to do it? Like that's the key thing. Like comics journalism can be amazing. It is amazing every day, but it can be amazing more regularly if we just kind of all support it and not just assume someone else will do it. It'll be better in the future. It's not worth supporting now. So that I'll get off my soapbox.
That was a phenomenal answer. Um, and I think what we all got out of that is that you guys should join the Comics Pals Patreon. I'm
Yeah,
just kidding. No,
everybody should. Cale, like you should join yourself, even though
I think you might have actually. Yeah.
Listen, I'm already holding the place up. I can't, I can't do much more than I already am.
Chris, that's a brilliant answer. In all seriousness, I think that there are some really smart people that want to do comics journalism and want to, produce great material. You mentioned David Harper from Sketched. I've got my subscription. I love what they do over there. It's phenomenal work, and it's hard. It's hard. Gone are the days of like I remember CBR, they used to have the ads and stuff, and it could be ad supported, and you didn't have to worry about a Patreon or these things, but it's just a different industry now. And so it's important that people put their money where their mouths are for the things that they want and the things that they love. You've got to support it. Whether forget us, Popverse. In order to get hard hitting articles and journalism, they have to have the money to pay journalists and to pay writers and to bring new people on board. How often can Popverse hire a new writer to do articles that we're not necessarily reading, but beyond reading, we're not supporting financially. It's a lot of responsibility that gets put on us, but nobody else is going to do it.
yeah, like we just hired a second staff writer, so that's growth for us. I think we'll be announcing that end of this month, beginning of next month. Really good person. We had a lot of people apply for the position. We had 200 people apply for the position in 24 hours. We had to close it off because it was so many. There's a lot of people that want to write about comics and pop culture. It's just like there needs to be the readers there, enough readers to support it. Like here at Popverse, some of our biggest stories in comics was we broke the news that DC fandom wasn't happening. We covered in depth IDW's troubles. Like we covered some stuff with Scout Comics. We covered some details about, I don't know, comic book sales last year. We did some great interviews with people, and we're going to do those again. But if you want us to do more, it's about supporting us however that means. Like, yeah, we have a membership, just like Comics Pals does. But even if you can't do that, can you like and subscribe on YouTube for Comics Pals? Can you do that for us? Can you tell us what we're doing right? Yes, you can tell us what we're doing wrong, but if you tell us what we're doing right, that in the absence of pay sometimes or organization can encourage us to do that thing because we all have time. I won't speak for Sean here, but I'll speak for Sean here. Like Sean wants to cover some comic, but he probably doesn't think enough people would listen to it or watch it. But eventually, Sean will probably cover that comic on this podcast because he loves it so much. And if he can find other people that love that, he may do that. Maybe not just once a month, but twice a month, 3 times a month. Like who knows? But we need to like it's a two-way relationship, and like we need to tell Sean to like when we like the things that he covers, and it gives him the encouragement to do more of that, and that works for everybody. That works for me. That works for David. That works for Heidi. Works for everybody that's even covering comics journalism, no matter what form. If it's Twitter or if it's articles, if it's print editions, like any of that.
Love it. And we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Chris, for your insight, your honesty. This has been tremendous. I really hope we can have you back on here at some point in the future. You've been a phenomenal guest.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Listeners, we are ending the show now, but we will be live again in like 10 minutes to talk about Captain America Brave New World. So come listen to our thoughts on that. There will be a spoiler-free portion, but we are going to talk about everything. So if you haven't seen it yet, you might want to come for the early piece just to get our initial thoughts and then cut out. However you want to do it is fine. But do stick around because we will be back in about 10 minutes. The next time we will be live with you outside of that is this upcoming Thursday for Pals Pulls. Tune in to listen to our thoughts about this week's comics. Before we get to that, tune in Monday for Pals Previews, where we preview the week in comics. We've got a lot of content dropping, as always, and we appreciate you guys supporting it. Support popverse.com. Thanks again to Chris. We will see you guys next